because we have an epic podcast. Phil Labonte, he's on. I think he's back. I think this is the fourth time. I don't know why I can never remember how many times these guys have been on. And I guess I'm just at that point where, I have my handful of guys we bring back because it's always going to be interesting. And with me and Phil, or Phil and I, excuse me, I respect him so much, in terms of, obviously he's such a talented vocalist and frontman, and the consistency with All That Remains, and they have new material out that's absolutely crushing. But we see we see the world so differently, I think, in terms of politics, but but can have these kind of really serious conversations. And I think I don't want to like preempt the conversation too much, but I think he did very well for himself. I think the fact that in terms of giving his arguments, I don't know how well I did. I haven't listened back to the conversation, but I think the fact that he's kind of doing political commentary, for a job right now, he's got him sharp. He's sharp, and I really think the kind of in-person interview version of Phil is vastly different from the online persona, and you kind of hear that here. And so sometimes I think what's preparing this, you're preparing for kind of the online persona, and you get much more kind of somber, detailed kind of retort. But anyway, fun conversation, very apropos with everything going on politically. But this was done a couple months ago, so it might not be totally up to date, but I still think it all will still make sense. But anyway, check out my conversation with the awesome Mr. Philip Labonte. Phil, the five-time champion. I didn't realize until this episode. I went and just looked back. I was like, damn, man, you were like, I want to say like my 6th or 7th episode. And it's great because now we've done, we did 2016, for, and we did like the election special 2016. Then we did one in 2020, which I totally forgot about. And then now it's 2024. This is wild.
Yeah. That's one of the cool things about like, being friends for a long time and like having like that kind of history. Like you can just be like, yo, man, like, let's talk. And it's like, yo, totally cool. Like it's just talking to friends about, stuff that you see in the world, and for you to be doing the podcast for this long and invite me back. I appreciate the heck out of it. So,
hey, I was podcasting before it was cool in the
That's right.
pandemic.
That's right.
I wish I was as prolific as, people like Jamie, who's got like 9,000 episodes, but
Dude, Jamie's been doing everything forever though. Like Jamie, I was talking to a guy just this past weekend. He was at the skate thing we did, and he was talking about like booking shows with Jamie, like back when Jamie was like 15. I'm like, yeah, dude, like in the 90s, Jamie was booking my first band, like Perpetual Doom, like when I was, a kid and stuff. So yeah, he's been around. He's the old man, even though he's younger than most of us. Well, he's younger than you, right?
Oh, or we're like the same age.
Close. I'm 43. He's definitely younger than me.
Or he might be a year older than me. But it's like, it sucks now I can't call him the Diddy of metal because Diddy ruined it. Because he was
I would be bummed out if someone called me the Diddy of anything, man. I'd be like, yo,
but he was the entrepreneur. He was the entrepreneur. He was the the brand man.
Yeah, and now it's just like, oh, that's radioactive. Please do not, sir.
Yeah. Well, before we get into the nitty gritty, I just want to talk a little All That Remains because stuff is happening. All right, there's stuff to talk about.
Stuff is happening. Stuff is going on. So
where are we
not
at?
Sure. Well, right now, the big news right now is everyone knows that Jason Costa left a couple years ago now. He decided that he was tired of touring, and I don't blame him. Getting behind them drums every night and playing blast beats and double bass and stuff it's taxing. And so he was just like, yo, I'm kind of done. And like, we still love him. We still talk regularly. Like there's no bad blood at all. Everybody's like, he's still a member of like the All That Remains family. But he had enough. And so we had to get someone else, and Anthony Barone came in and filled in, and we weren't sure like what was going to happen with like what he's got going on and stuff. But we made the offer. We're like, yo, do you if you're interested in doing this, like we'd love to have you come on because we love the way you play and stuff. And he was like, yeah, dude. And so Anthony Barone is the official drummer for All That Remains. You might know him from Beneath the Massacre and some crazy stuff, so he's the man. And then there's I was going to be able to make an announcement today with you about something that was supposed to be announced earlier this morning, but has been pushed off a day. So I am not allowed to announce now,
Gotcha.
unfortunately. But there is super cool stuff coming. Like, if you are watching this and it is not today, like it's tomorrow or something like that, you should check like All That Remains website, allthatремainsonline.com, and check to see what's going on, because there's super cool stuff. We're going to be on tour this summer and it's going to be neat, and I just can't talk about it yet.
What the album's done, right?
Album is not, well, the recording is done. We're doing the mix right now, and it's been a process. So there will be new music coming. I don't know that I can announce that yet either. There will be new music coming very, very, very soon. Like, as soon as the announcement comes for what's going on this summer and stuff, then there's going to be a bunch of other stuff announced. Like, it was supposed to be, Anthony gets announced on Friday. We put some new pictures up, and then there's another announcement on Monday, and then another thing on, blah, blah, blah. But it's all got pushed back, and we are making sure that we don't step on anyone's toes, because we're supporting someone. So we don't want to go ahead and mess anything up for anyone.
Sure.
So.
Well, I'll tell you guys listening to this or watching this, Phil sent me a song and it's out of control. All right. And I had that feeling, because whatever kind of place the band is in is kind of seems a little bit removed from the way the band used to operate, or a lot of bands operate, where it's just like album tour, where you're kind of stuck in that kind of mill of where it's almost, I think it's harder to be as focused and connected to material when you feel like you're on the clock, or you feel like, oh, I have to make an album. But it seems like you guys are in a different phase where you can really take your time and there's no one making you do something or forcing you. And
Yep.
Clearly that's going to, I think, affect the quality in a really great way.
I appreciate that. And it is really nice to be able to be like, we're going to do this at our own pace, especially like, if people are familiar with the band, everyone knows that Ollie passed away, and what All That Remains looked like and what it was going to be. It took some time for us to figure that out, and then COVID happened, and then COVID, like everything was up in the air for COVID, and the touring was weird and stuff. And Mike had a kid, our guitar player, Mike Martin had a kid. And so there was a lot of things going on. And because of the fact that we have such a great fan base that supports us and loves our stuff, we don't have to churn music out.
Yeah. Thankfully,
Fearless Records, who I absolutely love for what they've done for us, they allowed us to get out of the record deal. We were looking for different kind of things than they were, and we were like, yo, we got one more record, but we would like it if you have the option. We would love to get out. And they were like, you know what, we think it's best for both of us. And we were like, thank you so much, we appreciate it. It was, because it's unheard of for a label to do that. That was such a great, wonderful thing that they did for us. So I'm forever in debt to Fearless Records. They're wonderful people over there. But we get to go out on our own and do it ourselves, And because of the situation that we're in, we could fund it ourselves, and we're releasing it ourselves. And it's a big experiment, and it's weird, but at the same time, we're going to own the record, and we're a band that's recouped to our label. We don't owe for past records and stuff. So we actually have, the ability to fund stuff.
That's great, man. Well, and I think, things have kind of come full circle, where even bands like God Forbid have experienced it, where that enough time passes and you create a catalog that is considered classic, or in a way, because I think you guys flourished, through some of the years that, bands like us were struggling. So you have the benefit of kind of having done well at a time that people are rediscovering, but then you also kept current in a way that allowed you to tap into many different facets of the kind of generations of how people get into this heavy music. And I think it's probably all coming around now, where I imagine, the band might be having, when this new record comes out and touring, you might see a new level of success that maybe you haven't seen in a while. So I think it's going to be a good time for the band.
I appreciate that. That's what we're hoping for. We did go away. We haven't put new music out since 2018. So we went away for a while. There still seems like there's a demand. we got a great tour, like I said, coming up. And there's offers. There are people that are showing interest in having the band come and play, and people are, that have heard new music, seem really excited about it and stuff. So, and I'm really excited about the music. I mean, it was, me, Jason Richardson, Anthony Barone, Josh Wilbur, who's produced a bunch of stuff for the Lamb of God, produced a bunch of stuff with Testament. With Trivium, with a lot of bands. He's really, really well known. He just did the new Kerry King thing, which sounds awesome. It
Yeah,
sounds so awesome. So
everything
I mean,
Josh does is good.
he's great. He's so good, dude. He's a great dude. I love him to death. But like working with him is just like, I feel super comfortable with him. We work really, really well together. He's great when it comes to like directing. Like some producers are like, no, that's not it. And you're kind of in there trying to figure in the booth trying to figure out what they're listening for. Josh is really, really, really good about being like, give me this voice, make it sound like this, give me this. I heard, this thing that you do, or I want you to sound like this. You got to get that. He's really, really, really awesome about directing. And so like, I think this record has some of my best performances ever. So yeah, it's beyond anything we've done before. And I think that it does justice to what, All That Remains has done in the past. We didn't want to just throw something out. Like we wanted to make sure it's something that like would live up to the like Ollie would have approved of, and like something that like really mattered. Like just to we don't have to just put music out. Like, the stuff that we've done has made so that way I can, live my life very, very happily, and we don't have to rush stuff out, and the ability to take the time to make sure that it's the right music has been awesome. So I'm super excited.
Well, I'm sure. Listen, I know the people that follow this show are more than likely fans of what you do. So I know these people are going to be excited for it, and I think they're going to be very happy. So
Sick.
Another element there, I think that maybe factors into your music career is how things have kind of evolved in your kind of, I guess, can we call it a career as kind of a political commentator or talking head? I don't know if you necessarily view it that way, but things have developed and grown in that world with you having a position on Tim Pool's show, Timcast. And can you tell me how that kind of came about? And is it a job? Is it like how would you describe kind of that development?
I've taken shit posting on Twitter to a whole new level. So, because that's really what happened. Like, I've been on Twitter since, 2009 or whatever. And that's been my social media of choice to run my face and talk about, politics or whatever social stuff. And I avoid doing that kind of stuff on Instagram or on other social media sites, because I don't want people to think that the only thing about me is that stuff. I want people that are interested in All That Remains to have a place where they can go and look at, All That Remains stuff and find out about like, people in the band and what the band's doing and me and stuff like that. That isn't, being inundated with, political stuff, because, if you're not into it, I know it's annoying. If you're following someone on Twitter and like you follow them because there's one thing and then you're getting a whole slew of something else, you're just like, this is not what I'm looking for. And I get it. And so, I warn people, like, if you're going to follow me on Twitter, this is kind of the stuff that I talk about. So when it comes to the Tim stuff, like, I just been on Tim's show a couple times. We hit it off really well. He's really, I think he's fun. He's cool. Like, we get along really well. And for some reason, he was doing a live stream one day as opposed to doing his normal pieces, and which normally he does like a monologue for 10 to 15, 20 minutes and then posts that on one topic. And he was doing a live stream, and I was sitting at home and in New Hampshire, and he made a remark about having someone do another show. And so I sent him a super chat. And I was like, I'll do it. Like, thinking, kind of like, shit posting, just saying whatever. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, seriously? And I was like, seriously? Because like it was kind of like, wait a minute, are you serious? And so then, I was like, yeah, dude, I'll come down. Like we talked after the show, and I was like, yo, I'll come down to Maryland and hang out. We'll talk about it. And he's like, come on down. And so I'm officially a contributor. I'm not employed by him, so I get a 1099, but it's I am there to give my opinion on a vast number of things. I do the Pop Culture Crisis Show, which is, they call it PCC. On Thursdays, I do that, which is a talk about movies and talk about, pop culture stuff. Significantly less politics, but it is from more of a right leaning kind of perspective. And then I do IRL when he needs me. Sometimes I do it a couple times a week. Sometimes I do it no times a week. It's super convenient for me because he's like, he understands that the band comes first, and that's what my thing is. And so if I have to go do stuff for All That Remains, he's like, yeah, no sweat. So it's a great deal. Right now I'm in West Virginia. This is my apartment down here, as opposed to my house in New Hampshire, because obviously Mike is still up there, and All That Remains, like our studio is still there, and that's where we kind of converge. Honestly, dude, where Interstate 90 and Interstate 91 connect is right there in Chicopee. And so it's so easy for everybody to get to. We can fly people in to Hartford, and it's super easy. So keeping like Chicopee, like the focal point for the band, is super easy. So, but yeah, I come down here, and I'll spend most of the week down here and then go home on the weekends twice a month or so, depending on the weather. It's an easy drive. I used to be married, and the ex-wife lived in the DC area. And so I'm very used to doing the drive. So especially with touring and stuff, like a 6-hour drive, just kind of like, it's not a big deal. It's like, if it's 10 hours or more, then you're like kind of, but if it's under 10, you're like, I could do it in a day. No big deal,
Listen, man, you're living many lives. And I think it's fascinating, actually, because, I remember, I think we probably talked about this maybe on maybe the first time you were on, or one of those times, where I literally thought the predominance of your kind of political voice was probably hindering the band. And then I think something changed in the culture, where not only, like, I think also that there's like this kind of factor, right? Like, so when certain people are in power, it activates the opposite side. Right? Do you know what I'm saying? So like, it actually creates more kind of activity. And so you get more like, and I think the kind of in the culture war, things have kind of like, for example, like the anti-woke kind of movement has grown, in the last few years. And so kind of the wind's blowing a certain way. And I think, and in many ways, like, that those trends are moving in that direction. But I think the way, like, for example, like in the way the backlash to cancel culture, the backlash to Me Too, and things like this created different lanes. And then you have like an opportunity like this where, as I was talking to Finn McKenty, where I'm like, he's like, yeah, it's like everyone in metal and hardcore, they're all woke and all this. I'm like, not really. I'm like, I'm like, look at Phil. Phil has 10 times as many Twitter followers as me. Now, I don't post as much as you. I'm not like connected to it, but I'm like, there is a giant marketplace for those ideas if you're willing to kind of be that person. How has, since you joined up with that show, like, how has like the type of followers you have, your increased influence, like how much have you noticed a difference since then?
Well, so when it comes to, I've got significantly more followers now than I probably got twice as many followers now after about a year and change.
That's crazy
on Tim's show.
Well, he's a big audience. That's a big audience.
It is. It's a really big audience. And I also think that I don't get into the complaining about suppression and stuff like that on social media and stuff, but my growth was very, very slow for a long, long time. And whatever, my tweets haven't changed significantly, especially in the past. Like, I'm probably less buck wild since like 2017 because I quit drinking. So like I'd get on Twitter and I'd just, I just tossing it out there. Right.
I actually disagree. I actually disagree.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Cause I think
okay.
because I think just it speaking to that phenomena of when one side is in power, it activates the other side. So like Trump comes in and you have the Women's March and you have BLM, you have all these like things that come out of that Antifa, right? People get more animated. And I think when Biden came in, I noticed a more animation, I think from, because you're idea of like what the threats are from that become more apparent to you and more like you're more geared towards it. And I also think the tenor, again, the backlash to cancel culture and Me Too was, oh, I can't say this, so I'm going to say this 100 times in a row. And then now if a million people are saying it, they can't cancel us all. And now things that, like the Overton window moved on things that were like, you know, for example, like people stopped saying the word retarded for a long time. And now people just say it. You say it all the time, you know, but I think you're saying that purposely for the point of, because people said you can't say it.
Well, I mean, my lexicon hasn't changed significantly. What I'll put on social media has been always, or has generally been, stuff that will not get me booted. Like, so even when people would say that, when like before Elon came and
what'll get you booted? You mean before? You mean pre-Elon? What would get you?
Yeah, I've never been booted. So like even so pre-Elon, I'd never said anything that got me booted. So I would ride the line, but I would never say anything that actually got me, you know, suspended from Twitter under any of the on any of them. The only thing that I've ever got suspended from is from Instagram, and I don't know what happened. They just totally nuked my entire page. So nobody said anything. And again, it struck me as super weird because even with that page, like I was still not political. Like I was never political on Instagram. I made an effort to not be political on Instagram because that's where pictures go. And I can put up little videos of all that remains. I can put up, you know, that's the kind of thing that I wanted to show people when it comes to like video and when it comes to visual stuff. When it comes to like Twitter wasn't really geared for that. So I was sharing articles or sharing stuff like that. So that would be more towards like the political side because that platform was geared towards it. So it really blew my mind. I was like, I don't know why I got booted off of Instagram. They were just one day, it was like, you know, gone. And so
I've always don't have like a warning system or something where they go, hey, this post caused this and you need to delete this. That's surprising to me.
That's what I would have expected too. So, you know, and when I even had like on my, you know, I had Eddie, our manager, try to reach out to him and talk to people at Facebook and stuff. Stonewalled, no answer. So I don't know what it was. It was right around the time of the last election or it's like right around 2020 or that election. So I can't say what it was, but it's just, that's what happened. But I don't say things specifically that break the rules, but I will like ride up to the line. Whereas I think before when I was drinking, there was probably less clarity on the rules. And so I was probably more buck wild, and that's why my impression is. And I think that what you're articulating is true broadly, but I think with me specifically, I think that I was less locked down because of the drinking stuff like that.
I just think overall,
I think you're right I agree with you, but when it comes to the overall point.
Yeah, but not just you. I think the overall tenor has gotten more extreme and harsher. And you know, we're gonna get into some of this, you know, because because I think there's, you know, and I've said this a million times on the show as well, where like your in-person persona is vastly different than your online voice, you know, in terms of how things are represented. Because you're, you know, and then sometimes, and that's like, you know, and by the way, before we even get into it, like I want to just talk about, you know, you and I, the way we connect online, you know, is I think a very unique thing. At least it seems that way. Maybe I just don't know enough people, but it's in a weird way. It's like, because we've known each other for so long, because we like actually like each other as human beings, we can be critical of one another in a way that's embedded in good faith, where it's like, I know I can criticize you and I know you can take it. You know, you're not going to take it as like, I'm attacking your character. I think you're a piece of shit. I'm just going, like, me 9 times out of 10, it's more like, Phil, you know better than this. Stop doing that. What you doing, Phil? Philip, pull your pants up. Like, I'm like, I always, because I know you're just half the time you're just talking shit. And I'm like, and so I'll interrogate you on an idea, but I know, like, it's a comfort level that, like, if I didn't know you as well, I probably couldn't criticize you in the same way, or vice versa. You and I wish there were more situations like that, because I'll have a situation where you'll comment on something, and then all your people will come after me, and then it's like death threats and fucking like it's like not even joking, like it's where you. And by the way, I've gotten it from both sides, like horrible people, extreme people on the left, horrible extreme people on the right.
Yeah.
But I try and always, I think there's so much bad faith embedded in everything. People do not engage as human beings; they engage as like almost like people are robots, or like
Mhm.
it's very dehumanizing. Anyway, but I'm just saying, like I don't know like what your thoughts are about that, or if you have relationships like that with other people online where you can get, we have these kind of respectful back and forth, or if that's unique with us.
Um, I wouldn't say that it's unique to us, but I think that there is a quality that's unique to us because of how much history we have. So there are other people that like I can disagree with and have a productive disagreement with, or I could talk to them, and even if we come away not convincing each other, we don't come away feeling like the other person is a bad person, or we don't feel like it was approached in bad faith. But I do think that you and me, because of the fact that like we have like 20 years, like forever, we've known each
Dude,
other
20,
25 years,
it's 20, yeah, basically 25
so
years.
like
Yeah.
since like 2000 or whatever, to 1999 or something like that. So like because of that, like we've got way more familiarity, and like that the friendship's way deeper than other people. But like there are people that I can disagree with and feel like they're coming from a place of charity, at least.
Yeah. No, well, listen, I just think it's I want to break my arm patting us on the back, but I
Well, I mean, it's true.
but no, but I do get a lot of positive feedback, in terms of that, and I just encourage more of it. I hope we can at least set an example for
Mhm.
for people to follow, which is like uh you can disagree agreeably, and actually argue on the points, and
Mhm.
not, like you see it all the time. It's like someone will be like, the funny thing I see is people that will just go, yeah, failed musician. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, obviously they don't know, like they don't know the history or the
That
number, the
the
data,
the
or
failed
the.
musician the failed musician is because of Hassan Piker.
Yeah, but I think
It's
it's just like an easy thing that like people just almost they assume, because you're vocal, that you're doing that because you can't do music, or because you're, or whatever. It's like
there
it's
might be there are people that don't know the joke, but the people that know the joke there's a lot of people that also know the joke that jump in there and talk about the failed musician too. So
yeah, but the problem is, even if that were true, it has nothing to do about whether your political
no,
opinion is valid. It's a bad starting point, right? Like
yeah,
like you
yeah,
being successful or not successful at music has nothing to do with whether what you're saying is correct.
yeah,
So
true, true.
it's a reflection of the lack of engaging at the actual crux of what's important.
It is just there is a lot of tribal expression. So people just stick their head up and say, I'm in the other tribe. I'm on the other team. Anytime there's a, you know, short message, whatever it is, that is like insulting or whatever, they don't know you. They don't know me. They don't know me personally. The only thing they're saying is, I dislike what you said and I'm on the other team and I want to try and get under your skin. So once in a while, someone will get under my skin and I'll jump in there and I'll say some stuff. But most of the time, I usually let it go. And then when it comes to like threats or whatever, for the most part, I just ignore that stuff too. Um, because I just don't want to give it oxygen.
Yeah.
So,
So I want to talk. I don't want to linger on this, and I because I imagine, because the fact that you do work for Tim's show, maybe people will kind of project maybe his viewpoints or his kind of brand on you, and I want to separate that. But it's just, at least while I have you here, you know, I have to express. And I wonder if there's probably like listeners who, because you like reposted the thing, and they're coming like, oh, I'll check this out, and they're like, yeah, Doc, I'll follow Doc. And then when we get done with this, I'm like, fuck that motherfucker. They're gonna, I thought he was cool. But so they're probably gonna be upset with me, you know, especially when I'm saying next. But I don't like Tim Pool at all. Obviously, I don't know him personally. I mean, as a political figure, and for a couple reasons. All right, the first one being, I think he's fundamentally dishonest in how he portrays himself. In that he's clearly a right-wing figure. I'm not saying he's a Republican. I'm not saying he's conservative. I'm saying he is a right-wing figure who exists and holds up those tenets, but does not claim that. And I find that to be generally dishonest, and, you know, it's grifty-ish. I just invented a word. And I think he's an opportunist who capitalizes on division and negativity and fear and anger and makes a lot of money off it. And I don't know. Yeah, makes a lot of money. All right. As I say, if go woke, go broke, what's the opposite of that? Come on. But anyway, so, and I'm not asking you to defend that, but what the question with that would be is, because I don't, you know, I think a lot of times the way we consume opposite sides of the political spectrum is in like sound bites and little pieces, or maybe you'll see like, maybe I follow someone else and they'll do a piece on him and it'll be like a clip, and it's not the full scope as, you know, seeing someone day in and day out as someone who follows someone regularly. Is my first assessment inaccurate in that how he presents himself? Does he say, I am a right-wing figure, I speak for this group, or I am on this side? Is that how he presents himself?
Tim would not say that he speaks for anyone. He would say that he speaks for himself, and that he finds himself aligning with people on the right nowadays because the Overton window has shifted so far to the left. That would be how he describes it, because the Overton window has shifted significantly to the left in popular culture at the very least. And so him being a quote unquote right wing figure is him being essentially a Democrat from 2005. You know, like someone, his opinions align with Barack Obama when Barack Obama was running in 2008, not when Barack Obama was in office and got out of office, but the positions that Barack Obama said that he held in 2008 essentially are the positions that Tim has. And there has been a significant change in the left, in what is considered center left, center right. And he would say that his position is the meme where he was on the left and the left moved so far to the left that the center moved him to the right. You know what I'm talking about? The whole,
yeah,
like, that's how
a very inaccurate meme that is actually
well, okay, so I'm not going to argue whether or not the meme is right. I'm telling you the way that he would describe it. So he would, that's that, and essentially, you know, that would be how he would consider it.
Yeah. So that is a trend. So I think the way you're describing that is exactly what Elon Musk says. It's exactly what Bill Maher says. I'm trying to think. There's probably a couple of people.
There's a significant number of
Joe
people.
Rogan.
There are people, Joe Rogan, but also people like Brianna Wu, also people like Emma Vigland, also people like what's her name? She's on the Young Turks. She's the second.
Anna Kasparian.
Also things that Anna Kasparian would say. So yes, there are people that are further to the right than those three people that I just listed. But those three people have historically been reliable progressives, reliably on the progressive side, making the arguments that progressives make day in, day out. And they have been on the progressive side for the entire time that they've been public figures. So I understand what you're saying about Elon Musk and Joe Rogan and essentially myself, because I was a very a left-leaning Republican. Like I was always pro gay marriage. I was always pro
compassionate conservative.
What? whatever you want to call it.
That was the George Bush.
I stopped being a Republican because of George Bush, because of the war in Iraq. So that was the thing that to me I was like, all right, I'm not I don't want to associate with those guys. But it wasn't like I had like conservative Christian beliefs. Like I've never been a conservative Christian where it's like, oh, this is God says you should have this kind of perspective and stuff. If I'm a conservative, it was always it was the New York's conservative, where it's fiscal conservatism and socially progressive, like, or socially liberal, whatever you want to call it. Which is why I fell into the category of libertarian fairly easily, where it's like, okay, this is kind of the perspective that I agree with most. So to say that is what those people say, yes, you're right, I agree. But now that you've got reliable progressives that have come out and said, look, the left has now gone too far, which is the exact question that Jordan Peterson was asking too. And it's just, almost 10 years ago now. But he said, when does the left go too far? And it's something that the left has not been able to articulate. Well, now people that are regularly and reliably on the left, like Brianna, like Anna, these people are saying, hey, the left has now gone too far. The reason the left has to have left everybody for the left to go far. Well,
see, that's how strong his argument was. It destroyed his camera. It's too much. You know who did that, right? The left. All right, they went too far.
How's that? Is it working still? You can see me? I'm probably less centered, but
that's all right.
So with that, I mean, that's whereas you're not wrong in your estimation. It is when you articulate what's going on, you're not wrong in that. It is what, Elon Musk, and it is what Joe Rogan has said. But they said that 3 or 4 years ago, and then they became persona non grata or whatever. They became outside of the acceptable realm of argument. But people like Emma, people like or not Emma, people like Brianna, and people like Anna Kasparian, they're making the same arguments. They're making the arguments that, look, the left has gone too far. So I don't think that it's wrong. You may not agree with the arguments that they're making, but I don't think that it's wrong. I think that they're probably onto something.
Well, listen, I think there's one thing to kind of have the conversation with. I think sometimes, you can characterize as a straw man, or just almost like this vague figure over here instead of the person like you're talking to. Like me, I'm always consider myself pretty center left. And so my issue is mainly with extremism on all sides, right? So I'm just, most of the things that, you would characterize as the left going too far, right? Some of that stuff, it's so obvious to me, right? Like it's so obviously overboard that I don't even need to confront with it. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think the real question is some of the definitions, right? A, what is the left? Who does that represent? Are we talking half the country? Are we talking 30%? Are we talking 10%? Are we talking the loud voices in spaces like Twitter and TikTok, where the whole point of those avenues is that the way you get attention is by saying the most wild shit. And so and by the way, and that's the reason why people have this funhouse mirror version of reality where it's like, oh, well, this is the left and this represents X amount of people. And like, I'll give an example, something, during 2020 when it was defund the police was a whole thing. And right out the gate, I'm like, this is really stupid. It is a stupid thing to say. I'm like, and then, and people I'm friends with would like, well, check this out. And it's like, send me 12 links. I'm like, yo, if you need to send me 12 links to clarify the statement, it's a bad statement. You need better messaging. It's bad politically. It's bad policy. And it's not going to work. And I was right, but it was obvious. It doesn't take much thought. But I think when people are hyped up, right, in the middle of a activist moment, and they're filled with a lot of rage and emotion, and they're out there and they're in the streets, and they got the energy, and it's like, we're going to change the world. And so they come up with these ideas. Like, you cannot come up with political ideas on the march. You need to come with the actual policy in a room when you calm and you're thinking, not hyped up with fervor. And so anyways, I'm just giving an example of, I know who you're talking to, but just remember, those are not my positions, right? So there's a lot of things that I think you could say the left is doing that is overboard. And yes, I would agree with that. But my question, as always, is how many people does that actually represent? How many people who actually affect policy actually are doing things that have
so there are real actual, so I know there are people that take issue with, like, if you say things like, oh, communists, right? Oh, well, who are the communists, et cetera, et cetera. There are actual members of the DSA, which is the Democratic Socialists of America. They are in positions of local government all over New York. The reason that New York has the crime issues that they have is because of the policies implemented by these representatives. I understand what you're saying about thinking that it's only the activists and how many people are actually saying it. And I think that the results that we're seeing when it comes to the crime that people are experiencing in major cities, those are the results of things like ACAB, of things like defund the police.
Hold on, but
not just.
I have to cut you off. Okay. Crime precipitously in this country was going down for 25 years, right? Mm-hmm. And we had an uptick around the pandemic, 2020, and caused by a lot of stuff, not just those policies, right? Because a lot of those places, they were talking stuff, but the policies didn't actually happen. But it was just for a lot of reasons, crime went up. Then the last 2 years, we're seeing crime start to go down again, right? So what I'm saying is you cannot extract the data outside of this once in a century event. It's like you need to control for that. And I'm not saying you're not correct that there's not some impact, but you can't make a broad statement as to causal effects. Correlation and causation are two different things. Okay,
I wasn't saying.
No, but you're saying. Well, no, they did these policies, and then so that's caused the crime. Well, no. There's other factors.
It wasn't policy. Okay, so let me re-articulate it. The activist calls that say ACAB and that say defund the police. What that did was make the police not want to enforce the law because they were afraid of the ramifications of enforcing the law. That's why you see crime, and also because there's problems with homelessness that are a different fucking situation. That's not the same thing, because homeless people are there's so much mental illness when it comes to homeless people. It's a different animal from regular crime. So
can I ask you a question? You're saying like you're saying things kind of as a factual basis. And then but hear me out. But you're saying things like homelessness, all right? How are you describing trends that are extremely stratified, localized, right? And so what I'm saying is you're talking about something as it's this grand trend, but it's probably vastly different in 1,000 different places. I'm saying the problem they're going to have with crime in Columbus, Ohio is not going to be the same as the problem they're having with crime in Miami Beach, which is not the same as.
Then we can't talk about crime.
Well, no, I'm not saying we can't. What I'm saying is,
if we can't talk about crime and generalize, then we can't talk about crime.
No, I'm saying we can't
expect people to have specifics about specific cities and specific localities and make any kind of actual.
Well, no, I'm saying
comments that make any sense.
I think if you're going to make that point, speak about a certain city and talk about that city and say, okay, we have these facts. Okay.
I specified New York. I said, the city of New York has a lot of people that are in the DSA that are in the city government, and the city government makes the city's laws. And so you see the reflection of the city's laws in the fact that they're dealing with crime. They're dealing with it is a higher percentage of crime than it had been on the trend. I understand that there was an uptick in 2020, and I understand that it has been going down since, but it is still higher than the trend had been going leading up to it. And a lot of that is because of, not specifically because of funding or anything like that. It's because the DAs and stuff like that don't take criminals that get arrested and put them in jail. That's just, I mean, if you have people that are violent and they reoffend and you don't put them in jail, they're going to keep reoffending. That's just what happens. And that is because of the attitudes the politicians of the area have, because of the way that they look at the way that crime is to be dealt with. They're not putting people in jail. You got people that are committing crimes. If you don't put them in jail, they're going to keep committing crimes.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think this is it's a in-depth subject, right? You look at New York City, for example, in the early 90s, there were about 2,000 murders a year in New York City. Now that went down to like 200. All right. And I think it's crept up to about over 400 during the pandemic. And now it's creeping down again. So I'm just saying, New York City is actually,
good.
No, I'm just saying New York City is one of the safest cities in the country.
Safest, biggest cities. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I've spent plenty of time in New York City. I never feel unsafe. Listen, I live in Long Beach, California. I live in LA. Right. Mm-hmm. And LA's always been shady. Right. Always, like, people talk, oh, it was great. Listen, no, it's always been shady. It's like, y'all ever heard of Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society? All right, what do you think that was based on? A fucking, they made that shit up.
All the
Colors,
90s right? Rap was the greatest stuff to come out of California, the best ever, like all the Dr. Dre stuff. They weren't kidding.
But also the murder rate in LA in the 90s was like, you know, like being in Iraq. Yeah. All right, so but what I'm saying is, all this stuff is, you know, there's a lot of minutia to it. And I think a lot of times when it comes to the prescriptive measures or trying to figure out what things are, a lot of times it's a lot of confirmation bias on what we think. So I think what's important to kind of do is be as detached as possible in terms of how these things work, and actually I think it's actually kind of an important thing to have a variance of policies in different places, so you can, instead of like being like ideological about, well, this is the kind of policy I think works or doesn't work, actually just look at the different places and see, like, okay, what happens when this happens? What happens over here? Because at the end of the day, I think I really want to divorce myself personally from the ideology and get into, well, what works and what kind of society that people want to live in. Because I think if you were to like expand out and talk big picture, right? United States imprisons more people, probably, you know, I'm sure I haven't looked at the updated numbers since, you know, kind of policy have changed. We imprison more of our populace than any country in history. And it's very hard for me to believe.
I don't think that's quite right, but
maybe not his, but
any modern country, right?
Yeah, modern country, right? And the idea that, well, the problem is there's still not enough people in prison.
No, it's not that there's not enough. It's that it's not the right. There are a lot of people in prison. There are a lot of people that are in prison for nonviolent crimes. And like, if you're a nonviolent offender, I'm really, I am skeptical of prison as fixing problems when it comes to, you know, actually, I don't believe that prison fixes people. I think that it takes people off the streets. That's really what I think. I think that prison can offer a solution, but recidivism is too high for me to think that actually putting people in prison actually makes people not want to commit crimes or stops people from committing crimes. I think that, and so for the most part, I think prison should be reserved for violent people, and that's only for getting them away from people so they don't hurt anyone. Right. Like, otherwise there could be other ways to deal with criminals, but putting them in prison, especially people that aren't violent, putting them in prison with violent people, that's terrible. Like, you just make more violent people. So I think that nonviolent crimes should have significantly less imprisonment. And I think that people that are violent should need to be taken off the streets. That's basically like my thoughts on prison. I don't think that we should be throwing people in jail for very much at all. But I think if people are violent and dangerous, then they should be taken off the streets.
I agree with that. All right. Well, there we go. See, we solved it.
There we go, man. If only they'd listen, you know?
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to talk, since, you know, we are in the great tradition of these election years. I know we're far off from the actual election, but I think in many ways, not that much is probably going to change, you know, unless someone dies or goes to actual jail or something, between now and then. So it's, at least we can kind of get an idea of, you know, I don't even think this election is actually very interesting. It kind of feels like Groundhog Day in many ways. Yep. And I would, you know, if whoever you told me you were voting for or not voting for, I could probably almost guess or have an idea, and so I don't think it's that that interesting.
I'm not voting for Kennedy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't really care. Who's more of a meme candidate, Trump or Kennedy?
I mean, Kennedy's kind of funny, but Trump is like, there's just, I mean, you can just go on and on and on and on. Trump, like endless memes. They could be pro-Trump ridiculous memes. They could be anti-Trump ridiculous memes, but they just memes and memes and memes. He's endlessly memeable. He really is.
This is true. Do you have any, I guess, broad predictions? Not necessarily, I guess, all how it will turn out, but in terms, do you think there's going to be, with all the court cases, and you have people like Vivek Ramaswamy, who's like, if you think they're going to let Trump and Biden go against each other, you're deluding yourself. Like, do you have any like conspiracies or anything that you think, how do you think it's going to play out?
So I don't have any conspiracies. Like I'm not of the opinion that there was ballot stuffing in 2020. I think that it is my opinion that the Intel, the Intel department or the Intel community, by putting their name on the letter saying that it was that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. By saying that, I think that was the government putting its finger on the scale, and I think that it makes the legitimacy of it in question, because the government's not supposed to have an opinion.
Couldn't the same be said for Comey coming out in 2016 and doing that press conference and making a whole big show that probably swung that election?
No, because she'd actually committed crimes. They just decided not to prosecute.
What are you talking about? Hold on. So is committing crimes, you have to be convicted of committing crimes? So can I just say, since Trump is accused, they're like, well, he committed crimes. That's the standard?
Well, okay, fair enough. She was accused of serious...
Well, she wasn't accused. She was being investigated.
She was implicated. She was implicated because there was an actual, like, there's not a question of whether or not there's not a question of whether or not she had these things, though. Right. So if you want to talk about whether or not she was found guilty, there was no due process. She wasn't found guilty.
She was never even. It didn't even get to the point of being attempted to be prosecuted. It was an investigation.
No, correct, but she was found to have had those things. So okay, yes, I understand.
But I'm just saying. But is the standard? All I'm saying is the standard of someone committing crimes. You're saying, well, this person, I personally feel like she is more guilty, so then it matters. But in this instance, it's what all I'm saying is.
But you're talking about him saying something. You're not talking about them being like you. So you're saying, okay, he should not have said anything. Should she have not been? She was not indicted, right? They decided that the information they found was not worthy of her indicting it. Should he have not said anything about that? Should that have not been made public?
Well, so
is that what your position is?
Well, get this. So the Trump investigation into Russian meddling was actually started before the actual election. They chose not to make that was not public till after Trump already won, right? So that information was not public knowledge. That would have been that would have been interesting.
So your issue is after they did one thing with one candidate and had an effect on it, right? And then they said, we don't want to do that again. And so they didn't do what they did the last time. And you didn't like, which policy is preferred? Should they have not, or should they have? Well, I'm not asking what they did with Trump. Should they or should they have not said anything about the investigation into Hillary Clinton's her private server? Should they have not said anything about it?
I don't think there's a distinct policy. I think it's honestly, for the Hillary situation and everything that's going on, I think it's just bad luck and timing. Like, there's kind of no, like, I actually think James Comey did what he thought was the thing that was the most fair, and he was trying not to put his thumb on the scale, but just because of the timing. And if the whole thing that happened, the reason why, actually it wasn't even that, I'm sorry, I'm actually getting confused. It wasn't that he did that and said what he said. The issue, what happened before the election, was that they found files in the Anthony Weiner case, which said they were reopening. And because they were doing that, they had to send a letter to Congress to let them know. And that became the news story the week of. And it's just kind of bad luck, you know, of like, because it was nothing there. There was no there. So my point is that I think the connection with that is that, and even that letter, I'm pretty sure, and I'd have to look it up, from the intelligence communities, but not them saying it was Russian disinformation. They're saying it has all the markers. That is our opinion.
I understand. It
is our opinion, and I can totally see how, you know, I think there's a lot of mistakes that were made. You know, whether you want to give that good faith to say, no, it wasn't mistakes, it was intentional, all that. But I think we're in the environment of it is this idea that the way elections are going to be won now is essentially what we're going to do is we're going to get dirt on somebody, and then we're going to get the October surprise. And the whole point is, so what we do is like our elections from now on are just going to be find the craziest shit you could find, whether it's true or not, whether it matters or not, right? Just get all the dirt out there and then make sure that we just flood the fucking marketplace with shit so that you think the worst of a candidate, I think is a generally weird.
Is it your opinion that people make, is it your opinion that people's opinions can be changed? The majority of people can, majority of people's opinions can be changed by new information?
Well, absolutely. I think that's obvious. But what I'm saying is like, yeah, I think people's, why wouldn't that be the case?
Because I don't think that people think about things.
Okay, I'll give you an example. Willie Horton, right? Dukakis, the Willie Horton ad that a lot of people think is one of the main reasons why he lost, right? Mm-hmm. And by the way, that wasn't actually put out by the Bush campaign. That was done by a PAC, you know, kind of some Lee Atwater fucking, you know, but stuff like that, you know, John Kerry, Swift Boat, right? The dirty tricks.
So you really believe him? You believe manufactured consent is the driving force in American politics?
What, clarify that? What do you mean?
You believe that manufactured consent is the driving force in American politics. So you believe that the narratives built by one side or the other are powerful enough to move a significant enough amount of people to get them to change their opinion in one election or the other. I think because
absolutely, because if that weren't the case, no campaign would ever pay for a campaign ad. You know what I'm saying? Like people are susceptible. People are susceptible to influence. And what I'm saying is, through the years, the process in which campaigns are run have altered. So I'll give you an example. John F. Kennedy, you know, cheated on his wife, you know, with Marilyn Monroe, and was doing all kinds of shit, right?
Allegedly.
The press knew that. Mm-hmm. But because they held the presidency in high esteem, them it was beyond the pale to put out things like that. And there were many things like that through the years. And then through the years, things have gotten more tabloid, and the press changed, you know, how their relationship with how they worked with how, you know, they became more adversarial in terms of how they were covering it. And then I think someone like Trump,
considered the press adversarial towards President Biden or towards Barack Obama?
Well, again, what press? There's not one press, man. There's fucking.
I mean, you're the one that said the press. Whatever press you're referring to when you just said the press.
Okay. What I'm saying is, there wasn't a Fox News or a fucking Joe Rogan show that 20 million people watched in 1960. Okay, it was
a
lot
narrative.
more. Yeah. It was you know. So what I'm saying is, things have evolved quite a lot since then. Something I'm saying, and Trump essentially broke the mold, right? Because he kind of proved with a person like him who there's every week there was a new crazy thing he said or thing that came up.
You don't think that Bill Clinton playing saxophone on MTV was doing it, or President Obama slow jamming the news on whatever, what's his name, the Tonight Show or whatever, was doing the same kind of thing, making the president into the news story as opposed to the topics into the news story?
No, I'm talking about, I think all that stuff helped. Like those guys were very charismatic and used their likability to help them get elected and use pop culture and all that stuff. I'm talking about like how, I'm talking about in terms of negative press, right? So like grab them by the pussy, right? In any other year with any other candidate, that kills your presidency. It's over, right? And so what I'm saying is that broke the mold to the point where you could have said, even there's,
I understand what you're saying. The perspective from people on the right when it comes to like getting to the point where grabbing by the pussy was something that they were like okay about, or they were ignored, was because like the right really felt like we brought Mitt Romney. We brought the most milquetoast, the most Boy Scout, the most inoffensive conservative you could possibly come up with in America. And that's what Mitt Romney was. He was as inoffensive and as mild and mild-mannered as you could get. And the left still smeared him as every single bad thing you could come up with. And so the right just kind of was like, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what guy we present. They're just going to say this. And I'm telling you what the right felt. You can't tell me that I'm wrong. You can tell me you didn't see that, but that is what the perspective from the right was like. Donald Trump is going to go out there and give a middle finger to the establishment who has been calling us names forever. That was the appeal for Donald Trump.
Well, I get all that. And I hear what you're saying. I don't think it was quite as advanced as maybe I think your kind of perspective on that.
Dude, I still have a video. I have a video on my phone right now of Willie Geist on Morning Joe in 2015 saying the appeal of Donald Trump is he's a big middle finger to the establishment. I will put that on Twitter right now. Everybody knew.
Yeah, I don't disagree with
Donald Trump was the big middle finger. Okay.
No, I don't disagree with that. I'm talking about the Mitt Romney is Satan. I think that's a little overblown. I think Mitt Romney was going up against Barack Obama, like one of
he was called
no one was beating
Nazi and stuff. So
again, by who? And you're like, and you're gonna, it's you, dude. You have a tendency to take the most extreme person, like the 1% of 1% of 1%, and then go, everyone said that.
Bro,
and it's like,
you're saying that I take the most extreme version of the left.
I remember binders of women.
While we have literal, like there are actual like protests right now, people getting violent on campuses over the Israeli situation, and that is an extension of left versus right. So the idea that there is not significant.
That's not fair.
What? That's totally fair.
It's not.
It's absolutely fair.
It's not fair for me to go, hey, I think you're overblowing the Mitt Romney thing, and go, well, that's the same as this.
No.
Really,
I'm saying that you're saying that I'm selecting only the most extreme.
No. I'm saying I just think you're overblowing it a little bit in terms of the Mitt Romney thing. I hear what you're saying. I'm not saying it's invalid. I think it's a fine critique. I just don't think it's quite as big. I don't think that's the impetus for it. I think in terms of what happened in 2016, I think what Trump did, his genius was that the way he won was to make Hillary Clinton less popular than him. It wasn't to be likable. It was, I'm bringing you into the dirt with me, and when everyone's covered in shit, it's hard to tell who's dirty. So what I'm saying is that was the effective modality. If you were to look at favorability, right, candidate favorability before like 2015, right, Hillary Clinton was the most admired woman in America for like 15 years in a row. Okay, so to take someone who is literally the most admired woman in America and make her the most hated person in like a year is because he threw everything at her. He's like, she's a criminal. She is she's the devil. No one has ever done that. No one has ever done. Do you remember this? John McCain was at a fucking campaign rally, and his old lady goes, Obama, he's a Muslim. He's a terrorist.
Yeah,
he's like, no. He's like, no.
Mm-hmm.
He's American. He's a good father. Do you think fucking that's the difference? That's what changed. So that's all. Anyway, I'm gonna, I'm getting a little deep into it, but that I just think in terms of what altered, and that I'm saying is that difference between 1916, where like, hey, we know the president is fucking around, but we have respect for the office, or a candidate going, no, I'm not going to be a dirty politician. I'm like, even though the Willie Horton ad ran, right? George H.W. Bush never talked about, he wasn't gonna go put his hands in the mud. They was still respectable.
You're right, but look, Hillary Clinton's Hillary Clinton was the originator of the Obama wasn't born in America line. Like that was Hillary Clinton's campaign that came up with that. So like it ain't like
who owned it?
What?
Who owned it?
Even still, it was still Hillary Clinton that came up with it. So she made the argument. She made the argument. So to say that it was only Barack Obama that was engaging in these kind of things, or I mean, it was only Donald Trump that was engaging in these things, I think is not representative of reality.
No. I didn't say it was the only
Donald
one.
Donald Trump definitely took it to a dirtier level. He was way more comfortable being like, I'll be dirty. Because he did the whole George what's his name, Dave Chappelle nailed it when he did that bit on SNL when he's like, Donald Trump came out and he's like, all that stuff you think that's going on in that room, we're doing it. And then he turned around and walked back inside. It was true. And it was funny because it's true. Everybody knows it. Like everybody knows all of Washington is as dirty as it gets. I have friends that are, especially since starting to work with Tim, I've met people and I have friends. It is every bit as disgusting as people think it is. 100%. There's not a clean one among them. So hating Donald Trump more than you hate Hillary Clinton, or hating Hillary Clinton more than you hate Donald Trump, is an exercise in futility because they don't even know you exist. Like literally, they're all bad. So,
well, you hate Hillary Clinton more than you hate Donald Trump, right?
I hate Donald Trump a whole lot, man. That dude's an idiot. So. But the thing is, Donald Trump's policies are things that are going to be less impactful in a negative way on my life. All the things that I was scared about happening with Hillary Clinton, all the stuff that we talked about, it's all going on right now. Like, it's just that Joe Biden's in charge. Like I told you, I think that we'll end up in some kind of confrontation with Russia if Hillary Clinton's in charge. Look at what's going on in Ukraine right now. We're like right on the edge of a confrontation with Russia. Like I didn't foresee any of the problems with Israel and Gaza, but like all of the same kind of things that I was concerned about with the Hillary Clinton presidency, stuff that we talked about, are all the things that have happened since a Joe Biden presidency.
Well, but so, keep something out. You didn't just say that. You're like, she's going to start World War III. That's what you said. And
I said she's more likely to start World War III. I didn't say she was definitely going to.
Well, I
said she had specifically said stuff that would start World War III, which was, I will confront Russians in the air over Syria. That's what she said. She said she would make a UN enforced no-fly zone over Syria. There were Russians in the air and on the ground in Syria. If the UN moved in over Syria and said there is a no-fly zone and Russians challenged it, that would be US and Russia getting into direct combat. We also had an actual direct combat between US forces and Russians. Okay, it was U.S. Delta guys on the ground and Russians. The Delta guys smoked the shit out of the Russians. So they didn't want to talk about it, but they did. And so like that kind of stuff is real. And these kind of interactions between the United States and Russia, they're still happening and they're still concerning. So I'm still worried about like what happens with if there's a possible nuclear exchange between the United States and Russia. Like it was what I was worried about in 2006, and it's still what I'm worried about. So.
Well, it's kind of well, I mean, if you kind of compare that, actually, I don't want to get hung up on this because I want to. So sometimes we get kind of tagged into these little little areas and things get kind of locked up. But then we kind of got off our general point. Do you have any just predictions for how things are kind of gonna envelop through the rest of
I
the year, the election?
I don't. I think that the U.S. is really, really polarized. I think it's very clear. I'm not of the opinion that the American people are I'm not of the opinion the American people want Donald Trump. I am of the opinion people don't want the Democrats and they don't want Joe Biden. I do think that think that the Democrats and the left have pushed too far on multiple topics. I don't know if they're ready to say, hey, we want Republicans in charge. I think that the biggest thing that is inhibiting that is the women vote about, and they're worried about abortion. And I think that's the biggest problem the Republicans have is the messaging about abortion. If the Republicans could convince your average normie Democrat women that what Donald Trump says about abortion is what they're going to see, then likely they could pull it off. I don't know if they can actually convince women that Donald Trump is not looking for the handmaid's tale. The Democrats have been extremely effective at messaging to young urban women that don't, that don't want to get married, that want to have careers, messaging to them that the Republicans are after your birth control, they're after your reproductive rights. And if you elect a Republican, that means you in New York City are going to lose your right to abortion, and you in California are going to lose your right to abortion. They've been very effective at transmitting that message, even though I don't think that that's what the Republicans would actually do. I don't think that there's any chance of people in California or people in New York losing abortion.
Didn't Trump just say like they're absolutely not going to go for a national ban?
Yes, Trump said that, and he said that he wouldn't sign it, but I think that the Democrats are going to counter that message saying, no, he will.
Yeah.
Because that's the hottest topic. I think when it comes to the electorate, I think most women are like, I'm not going to lose my birth control. I think that, like I said, Democrats have been really good at messaging that the Republicans are after their birth control. I think that there are enough Republicans that'll talk about it on podcasts where they're going to make clips and make advertisements so that way so the Democrats can convince more people. I think that it's a terrible policy to even discuss, because you're going to give people, ammunition to use against you. But I think that Republicans are extremely stupid too. So,
well, I think there's probably a variance on the right in terms of that issue, because I think you have, people more on the kind of Christian conservative right, where their whole idea is, no, you do it incrementally. You say you get rid of Roe v. Wade, and then slowly but surely you work your way up to a full ban, and then then other more moderates or people who even if they're not moderate in their hearts, they just know it's politically unfeasible. So there's it's a non-starter. So there's no point in even trying to do it, because it's just not. You're just going to hurt yourself electorally so bad. There's no point in seeking it.
I don't think there's very many people that want a full abortion ban that are doing anything incrementally. The only thing that they wanted the only thing they were forced to do things incrementally when it came to Roe versus Wade. But I think that they're the loudest of the people around abortion, or the people that are for a full ban. I think they are a huge pain in the dick.
Yeah. I think it's. I agree with that. I think there's a lot of kind of symmetry between that and kind of the gun issue, of where yes, there are certain Democrats who are yeah, we want to take the guns, but most Democrats know no, you can't win that way.
That's not what the politicians say. That's the problem. Because just yesterday, the White House put out the orange square that said we want an assault weapons ban. So
I know,
you can
but they don't take that the assault weapons ban does not take old guns. It just
does not matter.
New ones.
It does not matter. It will not matter to people that are pro-gun, is what I'm saying.
Well, I know, but
you can make that argument and say, oh, it won't.
Well, no,
it won't
either
take
is
your
that or it's not.
Guns. Pardon me?
Either they're taking your guns or they're not taking your guns.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Black and white.
It doesn't matter.
No, I get what you're saying. You're saying that I get what you're saying. The spirit of the issue is that, but I'm saying saying we're taking your guns is the same thing as saying they're using that as a thing to motivate voters is they're going to take your guns is the same thing as someone motivating voters saying they're going to go for a full ban on abortion. That's what I'm saying. It is equally used as a fear tactic to get people to vote for their side. That's all I'm saying. That's the symmetry. So you're
Maybe,
like,
yeah.
no,
Okay.
no.
Maybe. No, I mean, no, I see what you're saying. So yeah,
You know.
I think that you're probably right on that. So
Yeah, it's just, but that's what, that's politics. That's what they do, So, I'm kind of the mind, I'm in a weird place where like, I remember, going back like a year or two ago, early in the Biden presidency, I'm like, there's this one, like Trump was kind of like, you weren't really hearing about Trump. This is before the indictments or all. So I guess maybe this stuff was kind of early days. And I was like, there's no way this guy can win. And then the ground started moving. And now I'm at the point where I think, if you're someone who cares about polls or things like that, and you see all this data that kind of suggests, there's a greater likelihood Trump will win. I really do think both parties have done their constituencies a disservice in running both of these candidates. I think the world would be a much, much better place. And it can literally be anyone. Just run anyone different. I think in many ways, at least the Republicans have some ground to stand on is that they actually ran a primary as not competitive as it was. I think the Democrats showed their it's like a combination between incompetence and cowardice in terms of not, because I just think if they would have ran a real primary, they would have been better off.
I think this suits the Democrats, to be honest with you, because I don't think the Democrats actually want one person running the show, because they don't have anyone. They don't have Barack Obama. They don't have someone that's really competent and
well, you mentioned Newsom. Everyone across the board. You mentioned Newsom.
Newsom is not Barack Obama.
Well, no, a Barack Obama comes around every 40 years. But I think the policies that the Democrats have need someone because the policies have at least panned out in a way that makes it possible for the right to make compelling arguments. You can get into the details about whether or not the arguments they make are actually true. I'm not particularly interested in trying to make or defend any of the arguments. I'm more interested in saying, are these things going to be effective? Is it going to work? Is it going to move people in their opinions? And I don't think that people are going to be excited to leave the House to vote for Joe Biden, but I'm not sure that Donald Trump will get enough people out to vote either. So yeah, but it's going to be like the last two elections. It's going to be about 100,000 people in about 3 states that decide the election. You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying those margins are so small that it just doesn't take much wind blowing in either direction for anyone to win. But I do think the numbers, if again, I think what the last few years have taught me is that whatever the craziest version of things, that's probably going to happen, right? And to me, the craziest version of things is Donald Trump gets convicted and Biden dies. No,
and Biden dies. No, and then Kamala Harris is the president?
Or what, dude, what I'm saying is like, I think in many ways, like I feel like the outcome that is going to create the least amount of chaos is if Donald Trump just wins legitimately, because then you don't get people saying that, you don't get the riots and the whatever
you'll get riots. It'll be left-wing riots. Remember, maybe the day that Donald Trump got elected and like when he was elected, he was inaugurated, there was Antifa going absolutely batshit in DC. They were smashing everything up. There were fires, dudes, their cars on fire and shit. Like, it was nuts.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, in terms of, I think there is a certain type of underdog fervor that this idea that we are, if these people who stormed the Capitol, they believed with their heart of hearts that that this was stolen, and you extrapolate that amongst tens of millions of people, and their whole ideology, I think, is driven by grievance. And I think if they feel like they're screwed over again, and again, if you combine that, let's say he gets imprisoned, I just think it's going to be messy. And I think the messy version of it, I think is really scary. And I think, and unfortunately, you know, if Biden wins or whoever replaces Biden, if they win organically, they're not going to. They already say it's not real. Do you know what I'm saying? There's no version of a Democrat win that's going to be considered legitimate. And I think so. And who knows? Maybe that's just like the standard going forward. Is that no one?
I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to trust the elections because the whether it be, you know, there have been people that have been, you know, saying that elections are invalid since, you know, Bush. You know, there's
nothing like this though. Nothing
Pardon
like this. There's nothing like this. And even with the Bush thing, like
I'm okay. So I mean, I understand
they still never
that
they stopped the recount. They didn't let him finish.
The intensity of this particular last election was unique, but also the conditions surrounding it were unique as well, because there had never been mail-in ballots. There was never a.
What are you talking about? Absentee ballots have been a thing forever.
No. I'm talking about where they were mailing them out to people, and there had not been ballot harvesting to the degree that there was. There was a lot of novel stuff in that election because of COVID. It was a novel way to even run an election. So whether or not that had anything to
are novel.
What?
I mean, it's the pandemics. The things, that whole situation was just something that was unique in a million different ways.
So that being the case, that you are saying it's unique, but I think that there was a lot of things about it that were unique, and it wasn't just because Donald Trump or just because of one thing. If it wasn't for the ways that things led up to the election and stuff, you might not have got an January 6th, you know? So
yeah, I disagree with that. I think he said it was rigged,
baked into the cake.
He said it was rigged before the election for months. He primed everyone. He did that. And by the way, he said in 2016, when it was rigged, and then even when he won, he said the only reason he didn't win the popular vote was because illegals voted, and I actually should have gotten this many more votes.
I mean,
so
look, Hillary Clinton was saying the same thing about the election, though. But I said, there have been people. Same. So then it's not the same. So all you're telling me is that when one side does it, it's okay, and the way that Donald Trump did it, it's just different. No, it's not just different. It is not just different.
Hold on. Here's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's a difference between a glass of water and the ocean, and you're saying it's the same because they're both water.
Yes, you're
Scale,
saying that it's okay when one does it, but it's not okay with another.
No, I'm saying Hillary Clinton conceded the election that night,
dude.
Okay, and did it on TV.
Yes, I understand she conceded the election,
and he still hasn't conceded the election.
It was
to this day.
I'm aware of that.
Did he show up? Did he show up to the inauguration?
Doc, you're just saying that it was worse when he did it. That's all you're saying. You're saying what he did was worse than what Hillary Clinton did.
Hold on. I'm saying a nuclear bomb is worse than a firecracker. Is it? Are they the same because they're both explosions?
That's what you're saying, is that he did it. When he did it, it was worse. That is what you're saying.
No, that's saying
what you're saying. You're saying that Hillary's was a firecracker and Donald Trump was an atomic bomb. You're saying it was just so dramatically different, and so much worse.
Literally, no one's ever done. Literally, no one has ever done this in the history of the country, ever.
Nobody has ever done what
Donald Trump did. Not accept the election and deny the election and go on.
So not accept the election. George Bush was going up with was fighting it all the way up till the Supreme Court finally had to step in.
Okay, and you know what Al Gore did? Because I saw it in the documentary. He's the vice president, and he had to hold on. He had to be the one to physically certify the election that he and I remember it was the one congresswoman. She's like, I reject this. And he's like, well, it doesn't matter. That is honor. That is holding up. That is even if he thought it was fair. What I'm saying is no one's ever done this. And the fact is, I'm sorry, bro. This is the opposite of Trump. This is like the other Trump derangement syndrome, is that because Trump is so disliked by so much, and it's like it's just a contrarian view. Instead of just like, if you were completely like devoid of everything and you were just looking at the facts on the ground, it would be so obvious that this is by the way, this is the one thing for me that really separates him in terms of, well, was Donald Trump a good president or a bad president? This is the act that dismantles any argument that he could be a good president, because what his gift that he has given this country, that again, he didn't do it on his own and he didn't start, but he is the most effective arbiter of this, is selling distrust and doubt. And he's done it across all boards, across every segment of institutions. And guess what? Building trust is really hard. It takes a long time. You have to know someone. You have to, breaking trust, it can happen in a second, right? You're with someone for 10 years and you love them and they cheat on you. And that one act, and he has made it his brand. And the fact that, and unfortunately, I think someone, more with your personality type, who already is pretty distrustful of these institutions, it's more just validation. But the truth is, we are all collectively worse off by having a society that is inherently distrustful. And
well, yeah,
more distrustful.
I'm in full agreement about a high trust versus low trust society. 100%. Okay. It makes everything worse.
And that is his superpower, is getting people to distrust the things that are opposition to him. And guess what? We will be dealing with that for decades.
I understand that you see Donald Trump as a cause. I didn't
say he was the cause. I say he was a part of something, but he was the most effective deliverer of the message. I
understand what you're saying. I believe that I understand what you're saying, that Donald Trump was essentially the crescendo of bad behaviers, and he has taken it to a new level. Is that
well, I think bad behaviors would be oversimplifying. I'm making a distinct point about the idea of selling trust and doubt. He is a merchant of doubt. And the whole idea is, I don't need you to trust me, even though many people do. All I need you to do is distrust everyone else. And
I understand. I think I understand. So you think that he is the focus of the reason why people mistrust the government the way they do.
No. So I think you can actually look at a few different branches of that tree. So right now, the one branch I'm talking about is faith in the electoral process, specifically for the way we elect president. There is maybe a third of the country who will probably never in their lifetime ever again trust that system, right?
Sure.
Yeah. And that is
is
the definition of poisoning the well, right?
So I disagree that it falls falls strongly on Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump is a symptom of things that are emergent because of the way that society is now. And I think when I say emergent, I mean things that nobody could have predicted, things that no one did anything about. I think that the way that people react and behave when the internet is in their pocket and constantly poking them changes significantly. I think it makes people into completely different animals. And I think that is something that doesn't get enough attention. I think when you take that and you attach politics to it, I think that it becomes a significantly negative thing in your life. So yeah. I think that is probably probably has more to do with mistrust, because people don't, and I obviously am extremely critical of the way the government behaves in general. I think the government has earned all of the mistrust that it has. I think that it has done sufficient things that are no longer controversial to discuss to make everybody mistrust the government. So whereas I get what you're saying, how You believe that the average person that had a general, and the average conservative person that had a general overall trust in the government no longer has that trust. And I think you're saying it's largely because of Donald Trump and because of his messaging. I think that, whereas I don't think that you're wrong about Donald Trump, the way Donald Trump campaigns, I do think that it is a view of what is going on that is a little more narrow than reflective of the total situation. So.
Yeah, listen, and I think, I think you make some great points there, and I think it's things like this, right? Like I can have that opinion, but how does one measure influence and impact, right? It's these things have to be kind of be measured in the long haul of history, right? And we kind of, we'll look back on this period of time, 30 years, 50 years from now, and we'll kind of see the trends and how things change. And I think Trump as a historical figure, it'll, I'm sure in many ways we're very close to it. There's a lot of emotions and everything involved with there that color the way we view these things. And it's hard to be, I think, as objective as we'd like to be. I know I try, I know you try. And I think in many ways, I think at the heart of a lot of our disagreements, especially on Twitter, is sometimes I think we view each other as almost the mirror version of the other person, which is that like we're getting to a place because of some deep-seated partisanship that we kind of view, or tribalism. We see each other like, oh, well, you're doing that because you're just with those, or you don't like those people, or so on. And maybe I think we both have a little bit of that in us. And it's kind of good that we can hold each other to account on that, in any way possible. But these things are difficult to determine. And I really try and grade, like instead of, I've said this before to you, that there's no such thing as an unbiased person. So the best we can do is try and grade our view of things on a curve. So like all the things I want to be true, I should be most skeptical of, because, or the narrative I wish for it to be, because it fits neatly in the way I see the world. I should, and I should be more apt to consume things that contradict what I believe, because it'll keep me sharp and it'll challenge. Like you constantly have to interrogate your own views and keep them. You have to keep it sharp and go. And like me, like I don't know if you do this, but I've had a view for X amount of years, and I'll go, why do I think that? Why do I believe that? Do I still believe that? Is that, and kind of have it scrutinize your own place,
Yeah. I mean, I do try to read. I've been reading a lot more philosophy the past few years, trying to understand why people seem to have a different value set nowadays. Like I've said this a couple times on podcasts and stuff, and when I was writing like The Fall of Ideals, right? Like the idea behind that title was like, it seemed like the value set that I grew up with was becoming not that people disliked it, but at the time it was like, isn't that quaint? Isn't that cute? Oh, isn't that cute? You think that it's important to keep your word. Isn't that cute? Well, you keep your word for your friends, but the people that aren't your friends, you don't need to. And I was like, well, no, it matters. Your word's only worth something if you keep it with everybody. Right.
Consistency.
And I felt like people had an opinion that those kind of values were passé. And I think that has been what has kind of directed my opinions for a long time. It's been me looking for, the values that I feel like the United States was founded on, which are Enlightenment values, and trying to find people that agree that those are worth saving. So.
Yeah. So kind of, moving on from the whole election thing, we kind of naturally move on from it.
Sure.
I kind of want to talk just a little bit about the past 4 years and how things have kind of gone. And, I know, and some of this is about the kind of topic of divisiveness. And I know you have a tendency to find certain imagery that you'll kind of post consistently to kind
Yeah.
of like hammer a point home. And one
Yep.
of these is this image of Biden when he did the speech, the kind of the MAGA, I guess you call it the MAGA Republican speech, um, and it's with the red background as kind of
Yeah.
a symbol of, I guess, I don't want to use. Maybe you want to describe what is so compelling to you about that image and why you use it as a point, or what trying to point you're trying to make.
So there's a lot of times where the argument is made that, which is an argument that you've made in our discussion, that Donald Trump specifically, but the right more generally, has taken things to a point that is beyond the pale. That it is, they have behaved in ways that are unacceptable, and that we just need a return to normalcy. And I think that phrase, Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans are a threat to the very soul of this nation. And that imagery is about as inflammatory as a president can get. Singling out one political group, or one group with political opinions, as a threat to the country is unquestionably the type of rhetoric that everyone says Donald Trump was wrong for doing. So it makes the point that this isn't one-sided, that this type of rhetoric is something that has been increasing on both sides. And also that I do think that that the left really believes what they're saying. I think that they believe that a certain portion of the United States is a threat to whatever it is they conceive of the United States, because it's my estimation that the fundamental principles that the U.S. is founded on are actually not all that important to the left broadly, and specifically to the Democrats, because I think the Democrats are strongly led around by their activist base. And I think you see that in the way that the president is currently trying to make accommodations towards the population of Dearborn and Michigan and stuff, because of the high, Palestinian population and stuff, making comments and stuff that probably upset his Jewish base, or the Jewish people in his base, in favor for trying to win the Palestinians in his base, or win over their opinions. So
Yeah, I think some of that's just pure it's just basic politics,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
his numbers, basically he had to split a baby in a certain way that no matter which way he went was probably going to hurt him politically. And I just think it's, some of this stuff is just bad luck in terms of just happen to be in power at the time the bad thing happens. And then
I feel like the policy matters, though. Like, so I don't think that the Palestinian Israeli policy, like, predicament for the US really should be that much of a predicament. I'm not specific. I'm not pro foreign aid, so I don't think the US should be giving money to Israel at all. I don't think the US should be giving money to anybody. So it's an easy position for me to take. There are people that are, upset that the US has any kind of relation with Israel, and those are the people that tend to be out, protesting right now. And so he's got to keep those people happy, and he has to keep his the typically Democrat Jewish vote, which is now has had a significant response to the October 7th attacks. You see, again, people like Brianna Wu. The thing that's really shocked Brianna Wu is the response to the October 7th attack by the left seeming to be uniformly pro-Palestine and anti-Israel, is something that shocked a lot of people that, that were consider themselves on the left, but yet, that are of the opinion that Israel has the right to exist, or that Israel should exist.
Well, I don't know if you noticed this about me, but I pretty much stay out of this topic, because for the main point that the history is so deep, and I don't feel educated enough to understand the ins and outs of, because for every thing you can say, well, this happened this time, and then before that this, and I don't know enough about it.
It goes all the way back to fucking literally 3,000 years ago. So the story goes back to the children of Abraham, like who the first fucking branch in the tree of the Jewish people and the first branch in the tree of the Arab people. So it's like super long. So you can go all the way back to there arguing with people. So
Yeah,
I
and I
totally don't want to argue with people about
Yeah.
that at all.
Well,
I just look at it like this. It's like when I saw the attack and I saw what they did to the concert, I just thought of the Bataclan and I was like, all right, I'm against you. Like, you guys are the bad guys. You guys that went in there and killed a bunch of people at a concert. Yeah, you're the bad guys. It's that simple. And so after that, like, I don't want the US to be involved at all. But like, if you're going to go into a concert and slaughter people that are just there to see a band play, then you're the bad guys. So,
well, again, like I it's a thing. Like, okay, well, if I come in and I burn your house down, and then you come and you burn my village, is everyone a bad guy? I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It's that's what I'm saying. It's a
one's got one group. Like, I mean, they still got hostages that are Americans. So,
yeah. Well, no, I'm saying it's like that thing from Goodfellas. It's like you hit him with a knife, he comes back with a gun. You hit him with a gun.
Yeah,
it's like it's a never ending thing. So if every act of violence is justified, then everyone can say that they're in the right. So I don't get into it because I feel like there's a reason for someone to say you're this. I think like, and I don't think there's nothing. People, what bothers me sometimes, not about you, this is about anyone. People who like with their full chest out, like say that they're against bad things. I'm against murder. Oh, you one of them against murder people. Oh, good for you. That's so nice. You against the bad things. Oh, and for the good thing. Oh, I didn't realize you were for good things. I like the bad things. So it's like, no, like that's like the basis. Like, we should expect no one gets extra credit for just being normal.
Yeah, you don't get extra credit for being like, I think it's bad when you killed innocent people.
Yeah. And anyway, but anyway, I don't get hung up on this, but I was kind of, we kind of, again, we got caught in a little cul-de-sac there.
Yeah,
it happens.
So as far as the picture, I think the picture is compelling because of the tweet that I superimposed over it, when it's saying a significant portion, and by significant portion, I'm probably a third of America are a threat to the very soul of the country. 1/3 is a threat. Because that's what you're saying when you call MAGA Republicans. Most of the people that voted for Donald Trump, you would consider MAGA Republicans. I mean, I didn't even vote for Donald Trump in the last one, and like, people call me a MAGA Republican. Like, I voted for the other Joe, right? Like, I voted for the silly clown Joe. Well, the other silly, talking about Joe Jorgensen.
Oh,
Joe, the libertarian. I voted for the libertarian.
I remember who the libertarian was.
Nobody does, thank God. But like, I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I'm not a MAGA guy. Like, I'm not a dude that's going to sit there, and you're not going to go to my page and find me being like, rah, rah, Donald Trump, this is the guy. You're not going to there's not going to be, MAGA stuff on my page. Like, that ain't me, but the left definitely thinks that, like, and I say the left, I mean, I call them shit libs because I think that they're liberals that just have lost their way and need to come back to the liberalism. But like, they love to go ahead and hate Donald Trump so much that they forget that not everybody that's criticizing Joe Biden is pro Donald Trump.
Well, it's interesting because I remember when that speech happened, and I think there's certain things. To me, what's important about the speech is the content of the speech, not necessarily the background and the color. I think that stuff is a little too getting infatuated with aesthetics that I don't think really, I think that misses the point, in my opinion.
I think the context, the context is just as bad. The Americans are a threat to the soul of the country.
So let's some
bad stuff, man.
So I think there's two elements to that, right? There's the actual, because this was, you gotta remember this period. This was like the dark Brandon phase when like kind of Biden was kind of like had his chest out a little bit, right? Like, he's gonna like like he's gonna establish himself.
A third of the country.
Well, listen. There's two angles to it. No, hear me out. No, there's two angles to it. There's two.
If you're explaining, you're losing, homie.
No, I'm not losing because I'm not like Mr. Biden. I don't think most people are like, I love Biden. Like,
nobody's loves Biden.
Yeah, no one's so. But to me, it was like I was trying to like analyze the politics of it to see like, okay, they're going for this big swing, right?
Mhm.
And so now you can say like, because I think you probably think like, all right, if you were to have like Elon Musk here and you go, hey, are is the woke left, are they a threat to America? And he probably would a straight face say yes, right? Um, and so I think what Biden is saying is essentially Donald Trump is at the head of, and what he said, a semi-fascist movement, this idea that they love this one guy so much and they're more loyal to this one person more than they are the country. And he did not accept the election results last time. If he gets in, who knows what's going to happen? Like, I was never like the Bill Maher side of like, he's not going to leave. I never thought that. But I've also come to kind of expect the unexpected. I think, how do you determine, right? I think the problem is we get into slippery slopes. And I think you're a big slippery slope guy, right? Like, well, this leads to that. And who is to determine what slippery slope is the one you have to, like, what dystopian future do you have to create barricades so blank doesn't happen? So I think ultimately, I think it was bad politics, and that I don't really know the point of the speech. Like, how does it help him? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, what are you gaining? Like we're gonna warn America. I'm like, against what? Your whole point, to me, if you're trying to like get those people to not think that way or have more faith, and like, you have to kind of win them over. And I think that I just don't think I think it's very ineffective, ultimately. And I agree with you that I think it's divisive. But I also do think there is a double standard where essentially I don't even like, Republicans basically don't have to be like, they're not expected to be unifiers. Like, Democrats, that's more their brand. So you get, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's like Obama, it was all, he's the unifier, and Biden, I'm going to be the president to everyone. So it feels more like hypocrisy when they go the other way, or they do something that kind of goes against that. And so I think I agree with you. But anyway, I'm just kind of, I didn't even have a question there, but that's kind of just my assessment.
Well, you were, yeah. I mean, you just brought up, my impression of the picture, and as far as I'm concerned, like, it just, I mean, it's like I constantly use the liberals get the bullet 2 picture with the hammer and sickle, because I'm making the point that liberals, like Democrats, American liberals, because I think that the United States is full of mostly liberals, right? Mostly people that believe, and liberals are center right. Liberals are not center left. Left, in my opinion, left leaning people are people that don't believe that people should have property, right? That property is immoral.
How many people? Hold on. How many people believe that in America?
Well, they're right now. It's essentially to degrees when you're talking about the squatting laws in New York and the squatting laws that you see. They essentially are putting degrees on how much you own it. So just the existence of a property tax on property on state level implies that you don't actually own it, and that's the very first thing that they do. That starts, like we just talked about, slippery slope. The very first step on the slippery slope to you not owning your property is the government charging a property tax on it, because that means that you always must pay.
But you don't have to believe anything for
you
that.
You asked me about the steps, or you asked me how, so I'm telling you how it works. I'm not telling you that this is the be all and all. I'm saying this is the logical process. So when you have squatting laws that are saying if the people that are squatting there can prove that they've been there for 30 days, then you can't evict them. That is attacking your property rights, because you have the right to dispose of that property however you want. Those kind of things are what start the whole you don't have property. And again, these are things that are generally left leaning, right? People
Sure.
on that generally are on the right believe that it is within your right to own property. In my opinion, property rights are the foundation of the country, right? So if you don't have the right to own property, if you don't have the right to own things, then you're not going to engage in any productive endeavors, because you're not going to be able to reap the rewards from it. If you don't own property to build your house on, your house doesn't, you don't have a place to live, you rely on someone else, you don't have any kind of incentive to make the place better, because it's the government owns it or someone else owns it. It's called the tragedy of the commons. Nobody owns the park gets worse. Once you have someone that owns the park and they charge a small fee to get in, the park's nice because there's someone around to take care of it. Same reason that like bathrooms get messed up and you have to have like constantly have people going in to clean them, and like take, like when they're like on the turnpike and stuff, they get messed up, no one takes care of them. You have to have people going in to do maintenance all the time because no one takes care of them. Like no one owns it. So anyways, it's just a matter of property is the engine that runs your economy, and it also is the thing that keeps your society working together. If you don't have secure property rights, then people don't invest, they don't try to better their communities and stuff, and that tends to trickle through your economy. That's part of the reason why socialist states don't work. So property rights are fundamental, and that's one of the very first things that you can attack to remove the incentive of people to better their own societies and stuff.
Okay, so outside of, because again, I think the internet's is a reality distortion field. How many people don't believe in property rights in America?
I mean, you can look at like Hassan Piker is the biggest streamer on Twitch, and I mean he's getting 20,000 people,
and he owns property. So how many people don't believe?
Oh no, okay, no. Now that's not. You can't say that, because when you say that to Hassan's going to say socialism is when you have no home. So you live in with the argument that, because I'll say the same thing to socialists, and they'll say, well, here's the deal. I live in a capitalist society, so I must live by the capitalist society rules. I would prefer to not own property, but because I'm stuck living in this capitalist hellhole, I have to play by the capitalist hellhole rules. So there are a lot of people that would like to not have property, but there are few, but because of the conditions that we live in, they're forced to engage in our capitalist society.
Well, again, I because I don't represent that position, I don't have a basis to understand whether or not you're arguing with a straw man and not something that's again, you can find a weirdo and play. And by the way, what the internet has done, right, has taken every weirdo extremist subset and amplified it, right? Now all the fucking crazy people can find each other, right? And have a little club and meet up. And again, things like TikTok or Twitter, if you say the most wild thing, it's going to get the most traction, okay? So I think you have the combination of two things. One, there's more of an amplification of weird people and extremist people, and there's probably more of them now currently than there were 10 years ago, because the speed of information and the way things kind of coalesce. But again, it's this idea between what is, like, if you're talking to me, right, and I'm not making that argument, but we are talking about someone who is making that argument. And again, how many of these people, what is their impact? What is, I'm just saying, like sometimes, I think there's a lot of, again, I see this symmetry between people fighting shadow monsters, right? And if you literally just turned off the internet, if you just shut off your phone, if you didn't go on fucking Twitter for a year, if you didn't go on YouTube for a year, and you didn't see, if you didn't absorb, and I think people have a kind of like they have an infatuation with the thing they dislike the most, right? So I'll give you an example. So if you're like a Charlie Kirk dude, right, or some Paul Joseph Watson, you're just gonna watch 100 videos a day of white people getting beat up by black people, and that's going to inform a worldview. If you're a BLM activist, you're gonna watch 100 videos of the police beating up black people, right? Or whatever the thing you don't like or that scares you the most. It's like someone who loves horror movies or someone who loves fucking roller coasters. They like the buzz of the fear and getting all the shit. So what I'm saying is, I I think you could probably be in the instance where you have an uprising of certain things like socialism and communism, things like that, because there's an uprising in everything. There's probably more neo-Nazis now than there were 10 years ago because of the internet. There's more people that believe in a flat earth now than did 10 years ago because of social media. All of the extremist ideas are amplified. And so what I'm saying is, when you're using it to describe like what is actually happening and what should we be worried about, you got to go, well, how many people believe this and how effective is it? And I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything, because of course it does. Because I think it's and you've talked about this, what is it? The Marxist cultural revolution
cultural revolution. Yeah.
So, and so is this all connected?
Well, so it's not connected as in like, it's not like there's a secret cabal that's like telling people what to do. It's just like you don't have to tell Catholics how to be Catholic, right? They all know because they're Catholic. Same thing when you have an ideology like
what about those priests that were doing the bad stuff? Someone needs to tell them how to be Catholic. They weren't listening.
Well, you understand. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. And when it comes to misbehaving with children, that's an access thing. It's not the Catholic thing. So
my dad's side is Irish Catholic. I don't know if no one ever taught me how to be Catholic. I went to church a few times.
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up as a Catholic, but the thing is, like, it's when you are around Catholics as a kid, and you're around that kind of, like, when you're in a religion, right? So you're raised in a religion. You don't have to be taught how to be that religion. That's just what you do, right? That's those. You go to church on Sunday because that's what you do, and you have Easter dinner because that's what you do. That it's not that you had to be taught that. It's just that was the way that you lived your life. So that was the experience that you had.
Yes,
right?
but there is a spectrum of religiosity, and like how people implement it. Like I said, it was an Irish Catholic family, but they did those things, but it wasn't like in our face. So anyway, little anecdotal story anyway.
So, but the point that I'm making, so the ideologies are not necessarily you don't need a top down to understand them. They can be ground up, and that's kind of the way that things go on the left nowadays. A lot of the leftist ideology and perspective comes because colleges are almost uniformly left leaning. Used to be there would be colleges that had some portion of the staff were conservative leaning. Nowadays, and for the better part of the past 10 years, colleges have been almost uniformly left leaning. And when I say left leaning, I don't mean just like kind of Democrats. I mean radical leftists. And you see that with the graduating classes. You see that across significant portions of the graduating classes that are coming out into the business world. And that's a lot of the reason why, like, people were like, oh, wow, there's all these woke companies. Well, the reason there were all these woke companies is because you had people that were graduating from colleges that had learned, left-leaning perspectives, getting into, the normal job market. And so when you have a bunch of people learn something in school, and then those normal people, that to them it's normal, and then they go out into the real world, and there's all these people that get jobs in the regular world, that same attitude is going to come with them. So the idea of like woke corporations and stuff, it came because there were so many people that were being taught these ideas, because there were like mandatory, you had to take one class that was in the humanities or something like that, and to get your graduation or whatever, to get your diploma. So you have at least a basic familiarity with these concepts. And when you get enough people out into society that have been raised with an in positions of authority, again, because people that go to college, they're not getting out of college and going to, dig ditches. They're going into journalism, or going into being lawyers, or going into other places that would be considered white collar jobs, or going into the tech world and stuff. So there is this massive influx of people over the course of 10 years that generally have a left leaning education, and they start behaving, they start just behaving what to them is normal in the job market. And it starts having, that's where all the woke stuff came from. It came from people being taught this stuff in colleges, and then they just go out into the normal society. So, that's why there was like an upswell of woke, and it's taken people that see the problems with quote unquote woke ideology to say, hey, here's a blind spot that's a bad thing about woke, and we need to focus on this, and we need to stop doing it here. And hey, here's a blind spot that people that are woke that have, and we see this because we didn't get the same education. And so there's some things about this that are okay, and there's some things that are bad, and you're starting to see people speak up now about that kind of stuff. And the people that are that believe the wokeness, that think they're right, are starting to fight back saying, no, you're wrong. But it's just, people trying to figure out the things that actually are applicable in the real world, against people, not, and it's turning into an against thing, but it's really just trying to figure out what is actually applicable that was learned in school, and what is applicable in the real world and what is not.
Yeah, well, so what kind of connects this idea to what the whole Biden thing in the speech is this idea of the divisive nature of how we characterize a sect of the population we kind of deem to be dangerous in a way that's like influential, right? And so and the kind of comparison I'll make is like, so you put it nicely, it's like, oh well, they have some commentary about the wokeness. No, they call it a mind virus. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's because it's saying that all white people are always racist.
Well, no,
it's returning.
Well, again,
rhetoric.
Well, again, the mind.
Listen, if you teach people, oh, hey, all white people are always racist, and racism is everywhere all the time, you just have to figure out where it manifests in this particular situation. That is a mind virus. That is teaching people that they think that the way that the world works is always oppressive.
Okay, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but anti-woke people do the exact same thing, just the opposite. So they say, no, the world is racist, but it's racist against white people. So it's the same idea. Anti-woke and woke is the same thing. It's just being hyper aware about issues of identitarianism. And I think, anyway, before I get into that on that level, I'm just talking about the idea of, no, the virus. I don't think the virus is the idea that the ideas that come with wokeness are the sickness. The virus is the idea that it has spread, and that the people are literally, they're sick, they're crazy, they're mentally ill. And the virus is that it spreads so much that once you catch it, you're stuck. And what I'm saying is, what is connected to that in a divisive sense to the MAGA Republicans are bad for the soul of the nation is, if you have an issue with someone's ideology, right? And you go, well, your problem is you're sick. Do you think that helps them come around to your side? Is that a convincing argument?
What do you think it sounds like when you tell people the problem is whiteness? It's the same kind of thing.
Again, let's talk about, I'm not making that argument. Okay. I don't agree with that. Okay.
Well, do you think that I tell people that they're sick because the way that I quantify, the way that I articulate it is always, I'm always talking about, I talk about the philosophy. I talk about where it comes from. I tend to talk about it as counter enlightenment, because I think that that wokeness is actually based in romanticism, the philosophy of romanticism. So I get what you're saying, but I don't do what you're articulating either.
Okay, so you're saying you don't vouch for that term, the woke mind virus. You think that's
I tend to avoid using woke, because I think woke is inaccurate or is inadequate. It's a philosophy. And in my opinion, it's based in romanticism. It's along the lines of the kind of stuff that the arguments that Rousseau was making. Rousseau thought that like you could have like wild man, uncivilized man, but living in civilization, right? It was a very romantic idea. And by romantic, what I mean is it was idealized and it doesn't reflect reality. So romanticism as a philosophy is following your impulses, following emotion, following our base urges. Those are the most real way that human beings can experience reality, can experience life. And the Enlightenment says that we should use rational, we should use reason to understand things. It says that we can know reality. It says that we can interact with reality, or at least we can interact with reality close enough, in a way close enough to have predictable results. Romanticism and stuff and philosophies reject that. They say that reason is our weakest faculty, because as soon as you start to reason things, you have a perspective that you have to have grounded in. And if you change your perspective, the ability to reason is going to change. And so we should go by emotion. And that's something that you find in the left more broadly nowadays. Again, not the left that I'm talking, that you would consider would be like blue dog Democrats, but the more progressive extreme left, because they're saying we can make the world into the way that we want it to be if we just keep trying to assert that it is a way, right? And there is a philosophy that says that the best way to interact with reality is to use reason. I say that we should use reason, and I reject the ideas that we should use something like Rousseau would say, which would be try to be more emotion based. Okay. And I know it gets big, and annoying when I describe it like that, but that's what woke is. Woke is woke comes from philosophy, and I use philosophy to describe it and to talk about it, because I think that that's a more accurate way to describe what's going on than just being like, well, they're woke and they're crazy and they're this and that. I try to understand where that philosophical perspective comes from.
Well, so. I listen, and I think sometimes, and I'm actually much happier that we're having this as a conversation, because I think sometimes it's hard to delineate this stuff on Twitter because it's like, it's pretty in depth, right? Mm-hmm. But one of my primary issues with, I think, that approach from your end is that it gets a little too deep in the woods in terms of, because it's not tactile. Most people think a certain way or feel a certain way or have an idea about certain things. Most people do not have an innate connection to all the reasons why they think that, or the inherent philosophy. And so I think a lot of times, you'll post a lot, it seems like you really like James Lindsay, a lot of stuff. I don't know stuff that well, but it's all based, it's like, well, some professor wrote this book back in 1904, and because that happened, it affected this or whatever. It's like these long drawn out, like these seeds were planted, and so because of that, people think this. All right. To me, it's not, things aren't often that deep. I just think, in the same way that I was kind of saying before, I think ideas are stickier now, and they spread faster and they take root quicker, right? So a lot of these things, like the things you're saying, like, oh well, white people are bad, right? That you're like this is some,
not white people, whiteness.
All right, whatever.
It matters. Sorry. It matters.
No, I hear you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
It's okay. It's okay.
Deflect that. But that perspective, right? I live in the world, right? I encounter people. I talk with people. I don't know anyone who thinks that, or maybe actually I wouldn't say that. I would say that I'm probably sure I do, but maybe those conversations are not presented in a way that's like just out in the open. And I think in my opinion, the movement, that BLM came out of, and the George Floyd riots and all that stuff, even when it happened, I think was more or less a moral panic. And again, it was the emotions were so heightened that people got connected and they got activated and they got brought in, and there's a swell and there's a reaction, there's a counter reaction, and it'll swell down. And I think a lot of those feelings and emotions, I think it will be like a snapshot in time. Yes, a lot of that will stick with us. But the conversations around it, my general point is, you may have your own approach to it, which I think in your mind is fairly considered and almost semi-academic. But I think the general viewpoint on it is like, no, what people do is they go, oh, it's a black mermaid, and that's woke, and woke is bad, and they're crazy. And what I'm saying is, just like Joe Biden going out there and doing his speech and saying MAGA Republicans are a threat to democracy, which even if he's right, it doesn't help changing those people. I don't think the anti-woke kind of as a platform and as a movement is doing any work to actually really listen to those people or connect or go, okay, well, what are these ideas stemming from? Let's have the conversation. There's, again, if your main point is that they're crazy, then how do you get out? And I'm not saying you're saying that. Again, I want to speak to each other, not speak for other, like we shouldn't be like speaking past each other to an argument someone else is making. But yeah, so I just think the approach around it really, is not very connective, and I think further steeps this divisive nature. And I think there's certain elements of you, and it kind of connects to this with like the way you post. Like you said this thing. You go, we got this whole thing, but you said a post. It was communists aren't people. All right, is that just a troll? Is that literal?
I say communists aren't people?
Yeah,
myself, or did I retweet something someone else said?
I'm pretty sure you posted it. Maybe I'm wrong, but that was my recollection.
So that's a meme that goes, the meme is communists aren't people, they're government property. So it's a meme.
It's a meme. Okay, so it's not meant to be literal.
No, it's the meme is, the meme was like, communists aren't people because people are individuals, and communists consider themselves a member of a group, or because communists are owned by the government because they're not people is the meme, but it's not like, it's not real. No.
But you do believe that communists are evil.
Yes. The idea that you can remake human beings that you can perfect human beings always ends up killing people, and it kills a lot of people. And I also believe that the impulse that communists have, that they can predict how best to organize society from the top down, that is evil, because it's saying that better than other people how they should organize their lives, and that you must do so, or else the government will kill you or imprison you. There's no room for this. Communism is a totalitarian ideology. So when you hear communists say like real communism has never been tried, the reason they say that is because communism is a global, classless, moneyless society. So there is no countries. It's just everybody on earth is living the same type of life in a commune. There is no government, and that has never been tried. So when communists say real communism has never been tried, what they mean is there has never been global communism. To make global communism means that you must oppress people that dissent. It means that there can be no one that disagrees. The only way to get to that is to kill the people that disagree. That's why communism always ends up in piles and piles and piles of dead bodies throughout all of history. Every single time it's tried, millions and millions and millions of people die, and that's why it's evil.
Gotcha. So, And I hear that, and I think we can look at historical examples that are emblematic of that. That I think give a lot of credence to that, and I think that's I think the way you described that, I thought was very, very well done. But I think the problem with that is this kind of mission creep on who is, again, there's a difference between saying an ideology is evil, or historically when it's been applied is evil. There's another thing where you go, hey, people are evil, and they're evil based on their ideas, and then who is decided are those people? Are they allowed to self-describe? So I think then it goes, so there's communists here, right? And there's, again, I don't know one person in my life who is a self-described communist.
I will tell you when we get off of this things that are people that are communists in your life, because I know there are people in your life that are communists.
Yeah. And again, like the same thing I said before about the whiteness thing, like maybe that people do think that, but it's not really spoken, right? So that exists, but then there's people who go, well, I'm a socialist or I'm a democratic socialist.
Yeah.
And then I go, okay, so if in your opinion the communists are evil, are the socialists evil too?
Lenin said that the goal of socialism is communism. So, whereas I do understand what you're saying, you're talking about the degrees, but everyone when you describe socialism, the way that socialists generally say describe socialism is a step on the way to communism. My problem arises when you have people that talk about utopian societies, right? So the communists believe that the global utopia, the global society that is the perfected society, the classless, moneyless society, that's a utopia. It's the same thing that the Nazis were thinking of when they were like, once we kill everybody that's not a Germanic Aryan person, we'll have perfected society and we'll do that on the globe. That was the ultimate goal of Nazis, kill off everybody that wasn't an Aryan and take over the world, right? So it's that impulse to perfect man. So Nietzsche talked about it as the Übermensch, right? You've heard that. I'm sure your listeners have heard. And the Übermensch is the perfected man that makes his own morality based on his own understanding of the world, right? So all of humankind up until Nietzsche declared God was dead, everyone's like, well, morality is based on what God says. If there is no God, what is morality? Is there morality? Can we have morality? And Nietzsche, when he said God is dead, and that's he meant it's going to be a terrible thing because he was predicting Nazism and predicting communism and predicting humans trying to figure out how to be moral when there is no reason to say anything is moral. Because without God, there is no reason to say something is moral other than a subjective reason.
Is that what he is saying? Is that what you're saying?
That's what Nietzsche's argument was.
Okay.
Nietzsche's argument is without God, there is no objective morality, right? So because to a lamb being doing lamb-like things is good, right? But to a hawk that wants to eat the lamb looks at the hawk and the hawk is evil because the hawk wants to eat the lamb. This is Nietzsche's argument. And to a hawk, eating the lamb is not evil because that's how it lives. That's how it survives. It's not evil. So evil to Nietzsche was subjective. So he said, if you don't have God, when man is trying to figure out what is and is not moral, it's going to end up being a slaughter. And that's essentially what happened. You had the 20th century, the whole first half of the 20th century was trying to figure out how man create society without God. That was World War I, World War II. All of it was the repercussions of the philosophers of the previous 100 years. So people like Hegel, like Marx, like Nietzsche, all those philosophers that did work in the 1800s, the result of the work that they were doing in the 1800s was the wars of the first half of the 20th century. So like the idea that philosophy doesn't matter, I disagree strongly. It matters very, very much because societies are built and destroyed based on things that philosophers come up with. Right now, the society that we live in is having a massive crisis because we don't know how to have the society that we want to have without religion. Because our society has been based so strongly on religion, we're trying to figure out how to do it without it. Go ahead.
I'm trying to see. So you were talking about, is socialism evil? And then you took that to, they want a utopia. So and then
socialism is a classless
can we
utopia.
Can we kind of square this circle in terms of how?
And so yeah, so if you're trying to remake man, right? So the society has been kind of up until the philosophers of the 18th or the 19th century, society was built on religion, basically. And then you had, hey, God is actually not real. We figured out that God is probably not real. And I'm an agnostic, so this is their argument. I kind of agree with it. God's not real. So how do you have society without God saying this is how you organize society? And so we're living in a time when we're trying to figure out how. And there are a lot of people that believe we can perfect society in the absence of God. That is what socialism is looking to do. That's what communists are looking to do. They're looking to say, hey, we can perfect man and we can perfect society if we just do X, Y, Z. But I don't think that you can. And every time there's been an effort to do that, you end up slaughtering people. And it's the same whether it be on the right or on the left, whether it be like the people that are like, oh, we can have a perfect utopia if everybody's the same race, or we can have a perfect utopia if everyone has the same ideas, ideology, or whatever. It's all trying to perfect society. So anybody that says, and this is my estimation, anyone that says, well, we're going to get to the society that we want to have in the future someday anyways, that essentially is some kind of utopian society. They believe they have the knowledge of a future that is promised to them or promised to us, and they believe that we can get to some end point. I think that time is not like that. That's not what human society has been like for all the time that there's been human society. It's more like more like the seasons, like a circle, than a journey to an end point.
So are
the socialist, so a socialist
evil?
Socialists would be evil because they're trying to recreate man and it ends up killing people. That's the whole deal. When you try to take man and take the human element out of man, which is you can't get rid of greed, you can't get rid of self-interest, you can't get rid of those things. So when you try to get rid of them in man, it ends up killing people. It is the desire to remake man into a perfected man that is actually evil and ends up killing millions of people. The desire to have a socialist man, to have a socialist society in and of itself cannot be anything other than evil.
Okay,
because you end up killing people.
Okay, so communists are evil, socialists are evil. Now, what about the people who are like a democratic socialist, like a Bernie Sanders or AOC or something like that? Are they evil too?
So I think that they're probably not evil, but I think they're wrong. I just think that they want policies that are bad.
But
I think if you're an ideological communist, I think you're evil. If you're a socialist who's like, no, we can just make society better and we'll get there, I think you're probably just wrong and probably not looking at a full scope of history to see the ramifications of the policies that you're hoping.
Okay. So then the next step of this for me is, okay, so you believe that, then who is to decide who gets to clarify or identify themselves as such? Because what I often see on the right is I get to call you a socialist. I get to call you a communist.
That's not on the right. That's on the left too, because the left throws around Nazi all the time. It's not one person.
No, I get all that, but I'm speaking just to because we've had situations where I go, it's like these categories, right? Where it's like, okay, so you're saying these people are evil, but then sometimes, not even sometimes, I think fairly often you just say the left, which I don't know. Yeah. And half time, I don't know who you're speaking about. I don't know. Do you mean Democrats? Do you mean
So when I say the left, I generally talk about the far left. So that's not Democrats. I think that Democrats are bad liberals, and I call them generally shit libs because they're asking for illiberal things, and they are supposed to be liberal. So when a Democrat is like, we should have these kind of speech laws that they have in the UK right now, I'm like, that's a shit lib. That is a bad liberal. You're supposed to be a liberal. You think liberal things most of the time, and you desire or are speaking up in favor of an illiberal policy. So that makes a bad liberal. If you are constantly or consistently want illiberal policies, then you can't be a liberal. You must be something else, likely some type of authoritarian, because if you're wanting illiberal policies, you likely want policies where the government would be telling people that they must do this or must do that. Those are illiberal policies. Those are authoritarian policies.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is that, so I just think it creates a murky environment where essentially I think there are things that all of a sudden from the outside looking in, it looks like you're going, well, again, very similar to the other thing where you're going, well, all these people are evil. And if I deem you're in this camp, you're also that as well. But then there's no then what do you do with that? Right? Like, what is the prescriptive nature? Because again, I don't think calling someone evil helps them come off their position. Like, I think all that, basically all it does is reinforce kind of like an ideological war where you're going, well, no, I'm just in a battle, right? And then then all of a sudden it goes, sometimes you go, okay, well, what is like the prescription? Is the idea to, are we having, is the idea, is like the idea to compete in the marketplace of ideas? Is that what it is? Or or is the idea that like, what I'm saying is like, I just don't know who is supposed to be a socialist, who is supposed to be a communist. Is it in the spirit of these things? It's, in our elected officials, can we find really many or any of these people? Very few, if any, right? Is the
Well, again,
idea, what I'm saying
I
is the
think
idea that they should just not exist? Should we fucking kill the fucking
we
communists?
should, well, so I'm not in any kind of favor of killing anyone, but they should not be in positions of authority. No, they shouldn't be in positions of power at all.
So
No,
they should not be allowed to. They shouldn't even be allowed
not
to have a
allowed.
party.
No, none of this. This is all like, so the type of comments like they shouldn't be allowed. That's inflammatory stuff beyond anything that I've ever said. Right? I'm not talking about shouldn't be allowed. Anything that I'm saying is, I consistently, regularly say, and I say this on the podcast frequently, we need to convince the shit libs that they're shit libs and get them to realize that they have been doing things that are illiberal. They have been endorsing policies that are illiberal. And by illiberal, I mean when they're endorsing things like you should endorse laws against speech. When you have, oh, you can't say this or else you might get a visit from the government, which is currently happening in not only in the UK, but in Canada right now. And these impulses, these tendencies are what are coming from the left today. There are people in the United States that are in positions of power that have these impulses. The Biden administration was going to make a ministry of truth, homie. Like that was a real thing until people made a big stink about it. And then they said, okay, we're not going to do that, because they were literally talking about making an a branch of a government administration charged with violating the First Amendment, specifically charged with policing the speech of Americans. Like that was a real thing that was going to happen. Right? Like the Biden administration actually had to be sued by the Daily Wire to get them to say, okay, we're not going to mandate a shot for people to work. Right? Like that was unprecedented that the government wanted to do that, a new vaccine and mandate through OSHA. Not just that it was a bad idea, but the way they were trying to do it too. So the impulse to have a significant impact on people's lives beyond what we have historically accepted is definitely stronger today than it's ever been. And we see it in not only the left of the government that we have, but we see it in the left more broadly internationally. And because of the what you're speaking to earlier about the internet being a transmitter of ideas, international left-leaning ideas have become more ubiquitous in the US. So it used to be, like I said, the Democrats in America were center-right. The US was considered a center-right country. Nowadays, we're not. I don't think that we're solidly center-right anymore. We're more of a center, not center-right or center-left. We're more of a center country because there are more people that have a left-leaning perspective. So
I'd agree with that. Is that something that I find a little strange too about being, it's funny you hear about, like the Alex Joneses of the world talk about, globalism and all the globalists, right?
mm-hmm.
But there's more of a kind of focus on thinking globally minded just on ideas, right? So it's like, well, now you live in America, but you're really focused on what's going on in Australia or their laws.
Yeah.
Or there's is that, do you find that to be a little strange that it's just now it's not just about protecting what's going on in my country. Now I have to be like really hyper focused. Well, there's something going on somewhere that I don't like, so that really affects me. Or is
I do think that people are too concerned with things that are far away from them generally, right? So I think that the best way to have positive impact about your life is to vote for the people, vote regularly for the people in your town. right? You make sure that you know who your alderman is. Make sure you know who your selectman is. Make sure, I don't know what they call your local politicians in New York State or New York City or whatever. Make sure you know your local politicians, all the way down to the people that like are community organizers on your block. Like those are the people that have the most effect in your life. When I am engaging in arguments on the internet, I don't generally focus a whole ton on specific policies unless I think the policy is offensive to the Bill of Rights of the Constitution. So gun things, speech things, violating people's privacy things, warrantless searches things. Those things I'll make us think about. But otherwise, I'm generally arguing about like philosophy. And when I say the left, I'm talking about not specifically the left in the US. I'm talking about people that have the philosophy of the left. So people that are postmodernists, people that are like, you know, people like that are students of Foucault or Marcuse, or people that are really into queer theory and students of Gail Rubin, or you know, people that are writing, you know, in modern modern journals and stuff like that, that are not politicians but leftist thinkers. You know, so my argument isn't with the politicians as much as it is arguing about the ideas that will filter into, you know, public consciousness or whatever, you know. So
Well,
that's for my thing. It's not so much I'm worried about the specific details of a policy. I'm more worried about the argument of the philosophy and behind it.
Is, you know, you kind of brought this idea of utopia, or like a utopia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's funny because I like my perspective, because again, I'm coming from like a center left. I don't think about things in these like these terms, but like, you know, to me, I definitely think of myself as a progressive, in that it's not that there's a utopia. It's just, you just want,
where you progressing to.
Well, it's just, well, no, but it's just incremental. Well, just in general, like life is a steady, you know, just keep, you know, you just want things to get better and better, and in whatever ways you can, you know. And
see, I don't think of life. I used to think of life like that. Like it was like, almost like it was like, you know, because we think of our lives as a starting point, we live it and then it ends. We can't help but think of things as like there's a goal or a destination. And I think that people before, and I've heard a podcast, and someone was making the argument that that's a very Judeo-Christian perspective, and that people in Europe, like before the arrival of the Christians and stuff, before Rome spread it through, people had more of a cycle kind of concept, like the whole, like, you know, the every spring, summer, winter, fall, and that was kind of like the way that life was. And it wasn't that there was somewhere to go, it was always changing. And I kind of try to think of life like that now more. Not that I feel like the way you're describing it is kind of ingrained into me, just like because I grew up in the West and stuff. But I do try to actively conceptualize, you know, things as less of a journey to a destination and more of as the journey is the journey, you know?
Well, I don't necessarily mean as a personal standpoint. I mean just in terms of my personal philosophy, and like, you know,
okay.
And some of this has evolved in that, like, you know, like my favorite genre of films is sci-fi, right? Yeah. So in my heart of hearts, I'm like this futurist where, you know, you kind of have this wish fulfillment that at some point, like, you know, like if you ever look at sci-fi, there's like two versions of the future, right? There's the pristine version, you know, where like we've, you know that meme where it shows like, oh, if we only enacted this policy, and it's like the picture of the, you know, there's like that perfect version world. And then there's like the Mad Max dystopian, you know, Elysium, you know, there's like
the Elysium is kind of the one that I feel, or District 9 or Elysium is kind of like how I think it's going to be, like, or how I think it would be like.
Well, yeah, I know like that's how you think it's going to be. I know how you roll.
Because I think that I have this, like, and this is a little sci-fi, but like it's my inclination or my gut feeling that in the future there's going to be like people that don't want any augmentation, because I think that Neuralink is going to work, and I think that eventually people are going to like have all kinds of bionic stuff on their body, and you're going to be decide if you want to run really fast, you can run, you know, bionic legs like Steve, like the whole $1 Million Man if you want. And I think that there's going to be like a religious group of people that are going to be like, no, we're not getting any augmentations. And I think that there's going to be an augmented group of people that are just like, we protect the religious people from people that don't want pure humans anymore, like real sci-fi kind of shit. I think that is baked into the cake.
You need to be writing this down, all right? This be your novel, all right? You can go get in the, you know, sell some copies and get the movie license, you know?
Right.
Sounds like a great story. But no, but I think that stuff is, I love sci-fi also for
Sure.
the social commentary, right? Because it's always speaking to the present and often a warning, you know, about the future and all that stuff. And but you know, you brought on a good point about this idea of dystopias, right? And I think there's a kernel of way of seeing the world, and you even, you know, self-described this to me, you know, on here is like that you're a doomer, you know, and
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
you know, but I think there's this cross section between doomerism and conspiratorialism, and I don't think necessarily for you. I don't think I think you're much more a doomer guy than you are a conspiracy guy. But I think there's a cross section which has coalesced in kind of the modern online right about those two ideas, and a lot of those things get manifested essentially in like a culture of fear, right? So this is, you know, and I see this kind of represented in something, you know, it's just like anytime there's a bad event, it's like, buy guns, get ammo, get out of the cities, get a fucking farm. It's this, and if you look at all the movies that are out, every movie is about, every TV show is about the end of the world, right? It's Fallout, it's Civil War, it's, you know, they're all, and there's this kind of almost like a romantic attachment that I think a lot of people, especially, you know, I think men of a certain age, there's this thing almost like if you're a prepper, party is almost disappointed if the shit don't happen. And it's like, man, I just got a bunch of beans and water and all these guns, no one to shoot at, no zombies to shoot at. This is whack.
I mean, dude, that was a literal meme. Like when COVID hit, like there was dudes like pictures of dudes like all kitted up, and they're just like, man, lamest zombies ever. Like this is the worst apocalypse I ever heard. Like that was totally a joke, man. That was the thing that was going on during COVID.
Yeah, and listen, and I think there's I joke about this, but I'm also serious about, like, you know, if this shit does go down, obviously the people that prepared for it are the ones you're gonna be like, man, I should have been like Tony. You know,
man,
like
I should have been like Tony.
Like
yeah,
people
exactly,
like me,
right?
we're fucked. All right, we got it's over for us. You know,
I tell my manager lives in on Long Island. I tell him all the time he's dead. You ain't getting off that island. You ain't getting off that island.
Hey, I mean, Long Island, Strong Island, maybe they'll be all right. We'll see. You know, but no, I think when you kind of cycle a lot of these ideas over in your head, and I think a guy like an Alex Jones is at the heart of this. I think it's selling an idea that everything is going to hell in a handbasket every day. Buy my supplements, you know, my get some freedom pills.
Look, I get what you're saying, but like as soon as you start talking about it, I'm like, well, what do you think like the whole like climate stuff is? They've been saying that the climate's going to kill everybody since like the 70s. And what was Mad Max? Like Mad Max was the world ended. And what was like Terminator? Well, the world ended. I mean, this is not new. It's not it's not local. And Apocalypse, what do you think the revelation was? This is part of the human condition. It isn't just like local or time like now. It's been, as long as there have been humans, there have been stories of the end of the world and the end of times and stuff like that. So sure. I get what you're saying, but like I think that it is less a symptom of modernity and more a symptom of the human condition.
Well, I think there's two different versions of that. All right. I think things distinctly shifted once the nuclear bomb was developed. Like that is a, you know, that's crossing the Rubicon in a way that you can't go back, and in terms of understanding things, and a lot of that mythology and the science fiction and all the stuff around that, that's like kind of ground zero for that. You can't, there was no event outside of something written in the Bible that you could conceive that could destroy the whole world outside of, a black plague or something like that.
Well, there was plagues, and I mean, humans definitely had a concept of disaster. I mean, that was the flood, the flood, or Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed, and I mean,
yeah, but we don't know if that's real. It's
no. It's not whether about it's real or not. It's just that humans had the concept of the stories. So these destroying all of society and all of the world that we know, like that kind of stuff has been part of human storytelling as long as there's been human storytelling.
Sure. Yeah. And I think there's, like it doesn't take, much kind of thought to think about like, what it must have been like. Imagine if you lived in England during World War II and you're being bombed, and like that probably seemed like the end of the world. Or, I mean, hell, things going on right now, right? It feels like the end of the world. But what I'm saying is I'm sorry. I just think the internet and the way that the people who generally, again, if you walk outside, right? If you just go outside and you go, what's going on? If you had no access to these things, right? And maybe all you did was like read your newspaper or something. I think people would have a very, very different reflection of that. And I think once people are scared, right? And again, I know you say that, look, the climate thing, and I'm not saying that's not a particular kind of fear, but it is something that in its real like action, it's at the end of the day, it's like someone buying a Prius. That's kind of what it looks like. It's,
well,
do you know what I'm saying? Every now and then there'll be someone who glues their fucking hands to a fucking bridge to like protest climate change or something. I'm not saying that shit like that doesn't happen, but that's not the standard for that. I'm saying there's a difference between, hey, the climate's going to be precipitously worse, and we're going to have worse, weather events, and
we're going to all die. The climate, if we don't get it changed in 12 years, everyone's going to die.
Well, I don't know who said that.
It literally die. Everyone's dead.
Again, I don't know who said that, but apparently you
Greta literally said that.
Well,
Greta Van Susteren.
By the way, you have this thing with dunking on children. It's like David Hogg, that fucking Harry guy. What is it?
It is not my fault.
Stop picking on children. Get some grown ass people.
That these people interject themselves into political
It is
and they do it as children, so that way they can deflect and be like, "Why are you picking on kids?"
Because you are. You're doing the Ben Shapiro. I'm gonna go to college and I'm gonna fucking debate kids who don't know shit and then act like I'm fucking Jordan.
I ain't debating nobody. I'm dunking on them. That ain't no debate. That's me poking fun at them.
That's the point. Is they're unworthy,
No. If Greta Van Susteren is going to go to the UN and be taken seriously,
Greta Van Susteren was the.
I mean, whatever Greta Thunberg. That's it.
Yeah.
If Greta Thunberg is going to go to the UN and speak at the UN, then she's going to receive adult criticism. Same thing with David Hogg. If David Hogg is going to be an activist and try to get laws passed, then he's going to receive adult criticism. And the idea that they're going to try to act in the adult world and get adult laws passed, but they are beyond criticism because they are children, that is a tactic that is not legitimate. If they're going to make adult arguments and try to act in the adult world and get adult legislation passed, they are absolutely targets for criticism without question. And I do not make apologies for that. I don't feel bad. No, if you're gonna make arguments that are adult arguments, I don't feel bad.
Well, I'll say this. I'm not saying anyone is above criticism. Of course, you can criticism, but when it's like the main thing, it's like, I'll give an example. Keith Olbermann, right? I don't know one person who takes this guy seriously. So it's like, I'm just saying certain people, yeah, but he's just a crazy guy. Clearly, he's a crazy guy. So what I'm saying is like, to me, it's what's important is to look at the people who have the most influence. So it's like if you're gonna come at someone like Hassan, at least I know Hassan has actual influence. Do you know what I'm saying? And he's actually out there in the game, and he's put, that is.
Yo, David Hogg has 1.1 million followers on Twitter.
Well, he's grown now
in the anti-gun world. So
he's grown now, but I'm just, I'm just saying before he was 18. Calm down. That's all I'm saying.
Like I said, my perspective is if you're entering the adult politics world and making adult politics arguments, you are going to get adult politics criticism.
Sure. I just think some people are way easier to dunk on than other people. Like there's almost to the point now, that
is true.
And where there's kind of there's a few different versions of this, right? Like where these troll AI accounts where it's basically they'll create a cartoonish version of Titanium McGrath, and then this guy, there's this one account, he totally fooled me until I realized, and it's
is it Dennis?
I forget his name, but it's a total it's 18 years old, single, patriot,
oh, no.
and it's but it's a total AI face, he just says cartoonish MAGA things or whatever, and it's just a troll account. But then when you actually get that, you're like, oh, this is actually pretty funny. And most people don't get it. They're just they just dunk on it. It's just there to be dunked on it, and it's just I guess it's like a engagement farmer account or whatever. But anyway, kind of getting back to what I was saying about the doomerism and the conspiracy idea, is that I just think what's happening now is people are being scared to the point, again, this is it's buy guns. They're coming for you. They're coming to get you. The invasion. They're coming. They're replacing you. I'm saying these things are going to have real world impacts. And I think there's something about, there's a reason why people get more conservative as they get older, right? And that's because generally the world changes. And I think people kind of got used to the world the way it was, and they just wish it would just stop changing. And guess what? And the world is going to keep changing, but this idea that it's always worse, and that's the one thing. It's almost like you said about the thing about people always being kind of infatuated with doomsday prophecies and things of this nature. I also think every generation, once they hit a certain age, is I don't understand the world. It used to be this. It's it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's something now where a lot of those figures have a lot of influence, and I think it's I don't even know what my question is here, but it's something that it really concerns me, and I think unfortunately a lot of people there's a lot of money to be made scaring people and out with outrage and scaring people and going, they are coming to get you, and you better be scared. Get away from cities, move out to get a cabin and get a bunch of guns and toilet paper, and you'll stay away. And then you don't need woke Disney. We'll send you our own version of Snow White, and you'll be safe. And there won't be no.
So okay, you're going down
it's
all
a lot.
Of the
I'm just saying it's
here.
A lot. But the stereotypes are there for a reason.
But I know I understand stereotypes are there for a reason, and I don't disagree that they are there. It is notable that when I start going on the stereotypes, you're like, oh, it's not everybody, but you're running down the stereotypes yourself. But still, I get your point. I do understand what you're saying. I don't think that it's a bad thing to tell people that they should be self-sufficient. And that's the ultimate message I think that most of us are trying to articulate. You should be in a position where what happens in the outside world, and what happens to, what happens on a national political level, you should do your best so that way you're insulated from that. If the situation is that there's a big power outage, well, don't you want to be able to make sure that you have enough stuff to get through the power outage?
Sure.
whether
No,
that be
that's
some kind of generator or whatever or something like that. But that kind of stuff is making sure that you are able to take care of yourself. And that, like, most of the stuff that I advocate for, like, I advocate, yeah, you should go and buy guns, yes. But like, otherwise, like, most of the stuff that I'm advocating for is just like stuff that you're going to see on FEMA's website.
yeah.
Right. Like, be ready, like FEMA says. Have a little bit of food packed away, have some water packed away, or have the ability to get some water, or to store water for a little bit. Those kind of things are basic. And the more people that were capable of doing that when COVID kicked off, there would have been less issue with supply chain and toilet paper and all that stuff that happened. Because I tell you what, when COVID kicked off, like, I the only change was we didn't go do the tour that we were supposed to do with Hell Yeah. Otherwise, my life up on the hill in New Hampshire, it was all the same.
Yeah. No, listen, I get all that. I'm just, there's certain things like, I know you post a lot about, like the left hates America. And I guess now I know what you mean. You're like the far left hates America. But I remember that phrase was used a lot during the Iraq War, right? To describe basically anyone who's against the war. They hate America. And this was used during the 60s and 70s. If you protest against Vietnam, well, the hippies hate America.
See, I have an outlook on that is I don't think that the hippies hated the Vietnam War. I think they hated the fact that America was fighting commies.
Well, again, it's all that, but the general idea is this the right kind of claiming patriotism in a way that I feel like has really lost its salience, in that I think, and again, I'm gonna, kind of, I don't even know how broad this is, but I think the right in general, the modern right, I think doesn't really like America all that much. I don't, they hate the government.
I think when you say now, like, if you say now, I think that's right.
I'm saying now. I'm saying, like, they hate the government. They hate half the people. They hate the cities. They hate the schools. They hate the press. They hate the scientific establishment. I mean, what do they like about America? Except the only thing they like is they'll point to some documents, or they'll talk about how it used to be good. Well, I liked it when, it was mostly white people. Well, but,
when they point the documents, they're not pointing to the documents. They're talking about the ideas contained in the document. So the idea that
one of which is the freedom of press, which they hate the press. So how can you, like, I like the First Amendment except the freedom of press.
No, they don't hate the free press. They hate the press the way that the press is now. And the reason they hate the press is because the press is essentially the media arm of the government. The press that the people that you're talking about on the right, the press that they hate, that would be the establishment corporate media is what.
Hold on, we had a different government 3 years ago, and were they were for the government then?
We had a different president.
Okay.
We did not have a different government. The government is mostly made up of the bureaucracy.
But those same people that you say are for the government were anti-Trump.
Let me finish. The government is not made up primarily of the elected officials. The government is made up primarily of people that work in a bureaucratic position. So people that are in the administration, that are in the Justice Department, the DOD, Department of State, DOT, Department of Energy, those people make up the government. The people that are elected are a very small portion of the government. The government is mostly unelected bureaucrats. So what they're talking about when they say they hate the unelected bureaucrats, because the unelected bureaucrats stay when the vast majority of them stay when one administration changes. So
okay, but we were talking about how the press reacts. So I'm saying you have like the mainstream.
The thing that the people on the right hate, or the thing that they like about America, are the things that are contained in the documents that you were referring to. So when you said, so they like the idea of free people, they like the idea of a limited government, they like the idea of the government being prevented from doing a lot of things. There is a significant problem, according to the right, when it comes to things like the necessary and proper clause and the commerce clause, because they actually empower they have been used to empower the government far more than the people on the right tend to believe. But the things that they like are small, limited government that is supposed to be limited by the Constitution, but the Constitution has proven to be marginally effective at that.
Yeah, but even if you're 100 years old in this country, you've never lived in a country with a small government. You don't even know what that looks like. It's a fucking fantasy. Like, I mean,
I have lived in in my lifetime. I remember a significantly smaller government.
Based on what?
Just Department of Homeland Security. The Homeland Security Department is the largest expansion of government power prior to World War II.
Dude, it was basically illegal. It was basically illegal to be a communist in America. Motherfuckers got executed. You know what I'm saying?
So they were not executed for being communist. They were executed for espionage.
Well, I'm just saying.
That's why.
When's the last time we executed anyone for espionage?
They were the last people executed for espionage.
I'm just saying, but people got their livelihoods taken away from them. They were blackballed. I mean, people talk about freedom of speech. I mean, fucking Lenny Bruce got arrested. Fucking George Carlin was arrested for fucking his speech. Fucking 2 Live Crew was arrested. Fucking and NWA was arrested for obscenity laws. Like, people act like there was this version of life where, everything was free. No, it wasn't. It's a revisionist history, man.
So, so just because that it did happen doesn't mean that it was right. And it doesn't mean that because
I didn't say that. It's pretending. It's this fucking idea. This is what I'm saying. It's at the heart of this nostalgia where you fever dream a reality that wasn't real. I'm sorry, fucking Kent State, fucking U.S. citizens getting fucking gunned down by the fucking National Guard. I'm sorry, that feels a little big government to me. All right, and that's a long time ago. Okay, but let's not
because those things happen, there is no. So because those things happen, it is now ineffective, or the arguments are to be discarded and say, well, the government failed, or the United States failed to live up to that, or you weren't around to protest it back when it did happen, so now those arguments are invalid. I don't know. That makes sense at all.
It's not that the argument is invalid. It's this idea, so you can take a chart of someone looking at say, what do you think about the economy, right? On the day before Biden was elected and after, and it's I think the economy's great when Trump's in. The day after, it's terrible, right? It's this idea that things become a lot more problematic.
What you're describing is problems with people, not problems with the right. You are focusing on the problems when it's the right, and fair enough. I'm not saying that you're.
Oh no, both sides do that. I'm using that.
It's not that one side does it more. It's not that one side. What?
It is more. So that same chart.
So that's something that I disagree with. It is not. So you're going to go ahead and say that because essentially the argument you've made our entire conversation is, but the right's worse. That's the whole long and short of it. It's Donald Trump is worse. The Republicans have done it, or Democrats have done it, but Donald Trump's done it worse. And then this has happened, but it's worse when the Republicans do it. And this has happened, but it's worse when the Republicans do it. I understand that you have a perspective that is not charitable to the Republicans and to the right. And most of the time I'm going to agree with the stuff that you say, because I'm not particularly in love with the Republicans to the right, but it is my experience that it is not one side or the other. I see both sides doing things that you articulate. I see them both doing it very regularly.
Okay. So with that one point about the views on the economy, for example, that was just a chart of, polls, and with Trump in particular, the Republicans pretty much, it was more drastic. Does it happen to both sides? Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And the kind of your overall point about me going, well, this is worse. It really depends on what I'm talking about. A lot of times what I've been trying to do is actually draw an equalization, right? So, and so I don't think I think it really depends on the issue, you know, where to say, okay, who is more off base on this particular issue. And I think, you know, my primary point, you know, like I said, we were talking about the Biden speech. I said, you know what? After looking at the impact of what it was, I'm like, I do think it was divisive, right? I didn't like qualify that. I just like, that's it on its face. What I did was saying is, I think it's hypocritical to criticize that and then go, well, this segment of the population is evil and these people connected to them are also evil. And by virtue of that, calling things a mind virus is also pushing them out and not bringing them in. And that is also divisive. And it's a collection of that. And what we can't do is go, well, only these people should be the inclusive ones. And we're allowed to be divisive because we don't like, that's not our brand. Our brand is fuck everyone. We're about us, you know, big dog.
Yeah, like, okay. So like this is like, I and I know it's not you. Like I said, I get that you have, I get that this is your interpret. Hold on. Hey, we got to wrap this up because I got my dog.
Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. I love this, man. It's so much fun. Like we're just breaking ground.
Yeah, right. So yeah. Listen, keep an eye out for new All That Remains music coming very, very soon. 2 weeks, maybe something like that. 2-3 weeks, something like that. I'd probably sooner.
By the time this comes out, it'll probably already be out.
Yeah, there you go. So go to www.allthatremainsonline.com. Check out our new song. Add it to your Spotify playlist, please. Apple Music. You can check us out on Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, you know, YouTube, you know, the internet stuff. So
that's right. Well, listen, Phil, you did a great job. You're you know what I'm saying?
Cheers.
You got your stuff down. I like, you know, I like about Phil. Phil keeps it nice and calm right here. I like that. You know, just delivering his points thoughtfully. You know, it's that he's got that beard, looking like a professor. He's like that's the philosopher beard. That's what that is. He's reading all them philosophers. Now he can deliver. Once it goes gray, then he can get a tablet and some robes and tell the people all the stuff from the mountaintop. But dude, thank you so much. Always fun. Always a good time. Always keeping me on my toes, which I appreciate. And
love you, man.
And I love you too, man. This has been great. And I will hopefully see you very, very soon. Can't wait to hear that new music. All right. Take care.
Take care, bud.
Peace.